quorum, so I will call the meeting to order as vice chair. And I will read the following acknowledgement statement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. Now on item 3, ex parte communications.
Before you, can I do a roll call real quick?
Oh, sorry. Roll call.
Sorry,
really going too fast for you. Sorry.
Vice Chair McLeod.
Here.
Commissioner Momin.
Here.
Commissioner Reek.
Here.
Commissioner Waddy is excused absence, and we are expecting Chair Pilch this evening. So, as you mentioned, we do have a quorum, so we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, ex parte communications. Has anyone on the commission received any regarding any item? And I have not either. Moving on to item 4, consent calendar. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to pull any of these items from the consent calendar?
I would just like to thank Christopher Tan for his services. I enjoyed working with him, and he was very prompt in responses, and I really liked his clear presentations.
Great. I will extend that to him. He is settling in at the City of Oakland and seems to be doing well.
Yeah, I would echo those comments. My appreciation for Christopher Tan's work with us. Very much appreciated all he did. Is there anyone from the public who would like to pull any of these items from the consent calendar? We have resolution for Christopher Tan and the minutes from our last meeting. Okay, hearing none.
Vice Chair McLeod, I do see Chair Pilch is out there virtually, so I'm going to promote him.
Okay.
I'll allow him to talk first and then see if he wants to be promoted to panelist. Chair Pilch, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I totally, having missed a few meetings, I totally, I'm not in the habit of making the switch to in person, but I'm able to go down there in person in a moment, so you should see me momentarily. My understanding is that I do have to attend in person in order to be a full member of the commission.
That's my understanding as well, unless there is, for public health reasons, you need to stay isolated. But generally, otherwise, yes, my understanding is commissioners do need to be present.
I think one of the reasons that I did, and you might hear it in my voice, that I did miss the transition is I do have a small or cold or flu. I've tested for COVID. It's not COVID, but if public health reasons allow me to participate remotely, that would be great. I think it would be in the best interest of the rest of the commissioners and the public.
If there's no objection from the commissioners, I'll promote Chair Pilch up.
No objection.
No objection.
No, I think that would be fine.
Okay, thank you for the indulgence, and actually, if you wouldn't mind, Vice Chair McLeod, continuing with the meeting, that would be helpful to me as well. I can certainly do it, though, if you're not able or willing.
You know, I think it'll be easier if I do it from here with the public present, and all be easier to
All right.
move the
Thank you
meeting
so much.
forward. Okay, thanks. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve.
Second?
A second.
Moment seconds. Let's take the vote. Commissioner Reek?
Approve.
Commissioner Momin?
Yes.
And I vote yes also. So that passes 3-0.
And
And one
Yes,
abstention.
and Mr. Pilch, I have to remember also.
for the record, was that Chair Pelch, that was an abstention?
Okay.
Oh, correct.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 5, announcements, communication, discussion. Is there any? Nothing on our agenda.
Just briefly to let the commissioners and members of the public know, we will be shortly beginning the biannual reappointment process for commissioners. Every commission and committee member in the city needs to reapply. That process will begin probably in the next week or so. You'll get an email from the city clerk first, and then I'll send you a reminder as well. We do hope that everyone, you've been a great commission. We hope we all reapply, even if your council member is termed out. It's not unusual for new council members to reappoint existing commissioners. So please, if you're interested in continuing your service, that would be wonderful. And we do hope to get people reappointed quickly so that we can continue. You're currently, there's a 45-day kind of window of where you're continuing to serve until those appointments are made, which gets us into the latter part of January. But the sooner we can get everybody formally reappointed, the better for long-term continuity for the commission. So look for those emails in another week or so.
Okay, thank you. Item 6, public comment. Is there anyone in the public who would like to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda? And the Brown Act limits our ability to respond at this meeting.
Hi, Clay Larson, Albany resident. I wanted to make a couple brief comments on the San Pablo specific plan. I talked to Jeff, and he assures me that it's now fully vetted in place. And I want to talk about the major, I think the major impact of the San Pablo specific plan was that it significantly increased the base density. And this has an impact, will have an impact on the inclusionary housing requirements. I attended every meeting, a lot of them were virtual, and I never heard that fully discussed by the commission. You got close to it a few times, but one or another member would steer the conversation on. In the interest of time, I think it's easiest to look at an example. So we can take as an example, we can take the 540, the bowling alley, 540 San Pablo Avenue project. It was produced or developed before the specific plan, obviously. The base density allowed 138 units, and under state law and under Albany's ordinance, the inclusionary housing requirements are set based on the base density, so that required 21 affordable units. They asked for a 50% bonus, and they built 207, I think. But again, the base density set the units. I believe that it can be shown that that project, under the San Pablo specific plan, can be fully built under the base density. So the 50% inclusionary housing requirement should now apply to the 207 units, or about 31 affordable units, about a 50% increase. 50% increase in density, you get a proportional same increase in the affordable housing unit requirements. So I think one of three things is going to happen. Either we're going to get some wonderful development with more affordable housing, or my favorite, this is actually a poison pill. I think the favorite expression of the consultants was the things might not pencil out with the added burden of 50% more affordable housing requirement. The third possibility is we seem to all feel comfortable with the notion that certain construction and technological issues limit the height to about 8 stories. But those circumstances can change. Construction can change. So the third possibility is we get buildings even taller than 8 stories, which is sort of we consider a maximum, even taller than 8 stories, in order to pay for the additional affordable housing. That wouldn't. I don't think anybody would like that very much. But it's in place now, so we'll all sit back and see what happens.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Commission and staff. I'm Peggy McQuaid, and as a former Albany City Council member, I want to take a minute of your time to personally say thank you to each one of you for the service that you've given to our community. I wanted to speak to you before last Monday night, but our schedules never quite meshed. It's not always easy or convenient to attend a meeting twice a month or to do all the work, and I know you people do a lot of work to prepare for these meetings. And meeting on Zoom for the last 2 years has impacted all of us in ways both known and unknown. And I'm really happy that tonight I was able to be here in person to speak to you. And I'm grateful to you all for your perseverance and your patience during this time. Planning and zoning commissioners have a direct impact on the quality of life for our citizens. You make decisions regarding the physical development of the city, both residential and commercial. Your influence on how the city actually looks and functions You influence how the city actually looks and functions through the design review process. You did a great job recently with the housing element, and you've had many other projects over the last several years, major projects, and you made it easier for council to adopt them without an undue amount of modification. Often you're in the difficult position of mediating between residents who wish to expand their home and the neighbors who feel their space is being squeezed. You do a wonderful job in trying to see the issue from all sides and to guide the process to a successful conclusion. You truly are a quasi-judicial body, and you have such great responsibility to be fair and impartial. And I know that you've taken this very seriously. So I just want to thank you again for the work that you've put into the Planning and Zoning Commission, and wish you every success in your future endeavors. And I hope that you all continue to stay engaged and serving our Albany community. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind comments. Any other speakers?
We have one hand raised.
One online.
On Zoom. Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Jeff Bond. It's Jeremiah here. One thing I just want to raise awareness is about the CO2 levels inside these buildings. I noticed above the double doors over there, enter to the chambers, there's two different maximum attendance or maximum persons per building. I think one says 89 and the other says 139. There's two numbers over there, and I'm just wondering what were the chambers engineered to ventilate CO2 from the council chambers? Is it that lower number 39, or is it the other number, the higher number 89? My concern is sometimes during even the Social and Economic Justice Commission, the fans aren't on, the vents aren't running, the air conditioning's not going, the chambers are not being ventilated. Even right now during this meeting, are the chambers being ventilated? Is the air actually on? Is the ventilation system on? Is there a CO2 monitor reading the CO2 levels inside the chambers? And for that matter, in all public buildings. The library for one, the community center. So I just want to raise awareness about the CO2 levels. It needs to be addressed and be monitored. Also, I want to point out the fact that this commission is responsible for pretty much all private property on one side of the sidewalk. Yet, you make decisions regarding parking which directly affects the other side of the sidewalk. You want to exempt construction from parking requirements. Where do you think those cars have to park then if they can't park on the private property? They got to park on the streets. So I feel there's some sort of conflict of interest to where this commission approves or denies, pretty much 100% approves all these parking exemptions from private property, which directly goes on the streets, which directly affects the Transportation Commission. Leave you guys leave them with a mess of figuring out where these cars need to park now. I hope you understand the point I'm bringing up, the fact that every time you put these cars parking exemptions from private property, it's now on the streets and it directly affects Transportation Commission. So I would like there to be more review for this parking structure. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you for your comments. I don't know if staff knows anything about the CO2 levels or ventilation in the room for public meetings.
I can respond to Mr. Garrett Pinguello, since this isn't on your agenda, but the capacity limitations have to do with fire exiting. It has nothing to do with air quality. So it's not related to my knowledge, there's no public health issues in this building at all.
Okay, great. Glad to hear it. All right, moving on to item 7. We have possible action on matters related to the following items. Item 7-1, PA 22-059, design review and parking exception for a second-story addition at 1019 Key Route Avenue. Do you have a presentation for us?
Thank you, Vice Chair McLeod. Yeah, I have a brief presentation, and I imagine the applicants are also in the room or online. I'm not, there we go. Excellent, they're in the room. So to start with here, there we go. Just to give you some background on the project, this is an existing 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, 1,111 square feet on a 3,743 square foot lot. On the screen, you can see the recent image from Google Earth Street View. They're requesting approval to allow what will ultimately be a 3-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom home totaling 2,032 square feet with a height of 26 feet incorporated into the project, but not subject to the Planning Commission's review due to state law, is included a junior accessory dwelling unit on the second level. So the action before the Commission this evening is the design review and approving a parking exception to allow front yard parking for the project. This is the site plan, and this is the location of the existing garage, which is being expanded a little bit to better accommodate a vehicle, and then the second parking space would be in the driveway in the front yard. Show you a couple of the elevations of the project. This is the proposed front elevation. The stairs that you see in the front lead up to the entrance to the junior accessory dwelling unit, and the door down here is the entrance to the main primary dwelling. This is one of the side elevations, the north elevation, and this is the south elevation. And our recommendation is that the Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any, and I can bring up the other detailed project plans if that's helpful as well.
Do commissioners have any questions for staff regarding the?
Not to the staff.
No?
Let me see.
I had a question regarding the landscape plan. Could we just bring that up?
Well, why don't we hear from the applicant? Normally, we would direct questions to staff regarding the presentation and any questions regarding the project. We would hear from the applicant. We can address questions to the applicant. Then we would request public comment, and then we would comment ourselves on the project. So do the applicants want to make a architect? Would you like to present your project or just?
Come here. I mean,
That'd be perfect.
thank you. I wasn't really prepared to present anything.
Or just give us a little description and.
So let's see, maybe we could go back to, Jeff, do you have the proposed site plan? Because that was what you showed was the existing site plan, or the landscape plan.
Bear with me.
So I'm Todd Jersey. I'm a Berkeley architect. And my client is Jerome and Jean, who are here. And so this project is expansion and improvements of, 1930s, 1926? Unimproved 1926 bungalow, essentially. And we're fortunate to have owners who care about the environment and care about sustainability, and we're a leading sustainable design firm. So we've been working together on, pretty exciting, I think pretty exciting, and I think, carefully sort of considered project. Well, you guys have this, so I can just go to, it doesn't really have the site plan. We don't have the site plan. Anyway, some important things are so we're taking the existing structure and we're lifting it for a variety of reasons. But it has a good roof on it, has a competent roof. It has a little bit of architectural detail, which is sorely missing today, so we're going to preserve a little bit of architectural stucco detail in the front and sort of accentuate that a little bit. We're lifting the existing house, we're also moving it back 3 feet? 3 feet. Part of why we're doing that is because Jerome and Jean have a really substantial backyard relative to Bay Area. And we wanted to provide a little bit more grace, move it up, move it back a little bit, provides a larger off-street sort of, unofficial parking space, which is officially used by everybody in the Bay Area. So we think that's, even if it's not, legal or whatever, it's an important consideration. So we now have, as Jeff mentioned, a nicer off-street parking scenario. Right now, the car they have a Prius, and they're not Hummer people. But this will be nicer. All green vegetation. We pioneered bioswales on commercial projects, so you're going to have great site drainage, and I'm also a native plant enthusiast, and so are the clients. So I think the landscaping will be lovely and xeriscape. Probably won't even put an irrigation system in. We'll talk about that. Not a big fan of any irrigation systems at all. I did want to say that working with Jeff has been fantastic. He's great. I mentioned to my wife, who sort of runs the company, that we got to market more in Albany because this is so completely different experience than we're used to. So thank you very much, Jeff.
You're welcome.
He returns our calls immediately. Christopher was also wonderful. So with that, I think it's probably enough if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant, for the architect?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could bring up the landscape plan. I just had a couple of quick questions there. We just received it
I can pull it up here.
a bit ago.
Just
Great.
There's the landscape plan.
There we go.
Yeah, so this was moved back. The house now is about here. You can see the dash line. Oh, no, the dash line, I'm sorry, is our second story. But the house is about here, so we have a more substantive. And you can also see where the property line is. So there's also this nice big right-of-way.
Sure. No, it's very lovely. Just a quick question here to clarify. Looks like pavers, you're going to be putting pavers in?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's different than the architectural was just showing a concrete slab.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see.
Well, we did a landscape plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
I started thinking about it.
That's
We should
very
put
nicely done.
The owners don't know this yet.
And just
You guys are putting the pavers in there. Yeah, Jerome's okay.
No, it's, and then the question on the trees, it looks like you've got trees out in street trees going, or is replacement
These
street
are,
tree? Or is there one existing there too? It's hard to tell.
Trees. These
So
are
the-
probably ceanothus and
Oh, so, okay, so more shrubs down there, and,
Maybe a tree manzanita or something.
okay.
They're all they will all be natives, except for the existing lemons that are here,
Great,
which are Myers, which the neighborhood wants.
okay,
Must keep.
great. I think those are my questions on this
Okay,
one.
thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
I guess, are there trees remaining in the backyard, or I didn't?
There is, this is just showing, there's two non-natives that are being taken out. They're not healthy and they're not
Those
native.
two, yeah.
They're here. They'll be taken out. This just shows native plants and a sort of a native meadow. This is undefined, but, I don't know. I mean, this is a great place. Back here is a great place for a live oak if the client wants to do that. But we haven't really gotten that far.
Okay, thank you. Seeing as there are no more questions for that. Oh, you have more questions for that?
Yeah.
Okay,
I just
sorry.
want to know, your drawing doesn't clearly specify that the tile pavers in the driveway, are they permeable or impermeable?
Oh, that would be permeable. That's a good question.
Okay.
Permeability is,
Yeah,
Crucial.
a lot of, stuff for rainwater.
yeah, no, that's a good question. Permeable pavement. That's partly why the pavers are there. We've tried permeable concrete, it's not a good product.
Okay. I think we might have one more question, or questions from Commissioner Pilch, who's remote.
Well, hey, Nick.
Hi, Nick, go ahead. You're on mute.
The old double mute. Okay. Nothing of substance, but just a reminder for members of the public and for myself this time as a panelist, if you do walk away from the mic, please speak louder or towards the mic so that everyone can hear. Thank you. I think I picked up everything that Mr. Jersey said so far.
All right, thank you. Are there any members from the public who wish to comment on this project? Anyone remote?
We do have one speaker remotely. Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't know if you still have the slide up of the blueprints of the driveway area. I can't see it anymore. It was up there for a little bit, but I was trying to make a comment about the driveway area. It had some measurements on there. I couldn't really see the measurements. I tried to zoom in. This unit is this lot 40 feet wide, 30 feet wide, or 50 feet wide? Just wondering the size of the driveway. And this is, I'm pretty sure this is 7-1, 1019 key route. So if this isn't 1019 key route, please stop me, Jeff. But I noticed on the agenda, it said something about parking exemption, parking reduction. And I haven't heard any commissioners or anybody even talk about that yet. And I don't know if it's just being avoided or what, but this parking exemption, this parking reduction, it's a big deal. And it doesn't seem like anybody's taking this serious at all. It looks to me there's plenty of room in the driveway to be engineered to fit 2 cars potentially in the driveway, except they're asking for a parking reduction, a parking exemption, because they want to put a planter box. I want to put a planter box in the driveway instead of a car. I don't see anything here on electric charging stations for an electric vehicle. I mean, what happened to everything? What happened to everything the city's going for? Electric car charging? I don't see that. And it seems like there's room to park 2 cars in the driveway if there wasn't a big, huge planter box. So it's just the priorities is really kind of concerning to me, that you don't want to discuss parking exemptions or parking reductions. It's kind of avoiding the whole situation. And you guys just want to approve this agenda item and now all of a sudden there's an extra car parked on the street. And now there's another thing being approved with potentially without an electric car charging spot. So, I mean, the design review is great with this planter box in the driveway, but there's room for another car to take one less car up the street. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Public comment on this project? Yeah, please go ahead and go to the podium.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to talk about the parking issue.
Yeah,
So, there's a new state law like AB 2097.
excuse me, could you approach the microphone a little bit?
There's a new state law, AB 2097, which is gonna not allow cities to require off-street parking, I believe, for single-family homes. So, there are other cities in the region like Berkeley who's preemptively adopted that. So I understand that people are concerned about parking, but I think there are climate change objectives to kind of get streets, for people to not actually have so many cars. And so I do feel like it's a good public policy initiative from the state. And so, as part of working on future projects, I believe the adoption date is January 1st. So by the time these projects receive building permits, I know planning, we're 2 weeks prior to January 1st, but that is something that might be considered as well. So I just want to talk about that.
All right, thank you. No more public comment, so we will close public discussion and move on to commission discussion of the project. Would any commissioners like to begin?
I can start if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I like the design, and I would be happy to support the project as it has been designed. I don't have any major concerns.
Oh,
Sorry.
louder, yeah.
Can you hear me better now? Yeah. Good, thank you. All right, okay, so yeah, what I was saying is I like the design and I like the project as is, and I would like to support it as is. I don't have any major concerns in terms of design issues. It is a modest addition to the bulk of the structure, but it has added a substantial usable area to the property without having making any negative impact on the neighboring structures, which is good. I like the landscape design. It is very, sensibly developed with permeability and other structures and native planting and all that. So yeah, overall, it's a nice project, and I'm happy to support it.
Yeah, I'd also just like to add, I really like the look of the front. The facade is greatly improved. I think it's a really good-looking design. And thank you for talking us through more of the landscape details so we understand that a little bit better. I'm really pleased with the fact that you're going with pavers instead of a concrete slab. So I think that's going to really add to the overall look and design of the home. So congratulations. That's a really nice look.
I see Commissioner Pilch has his hand up.
So thank you. I'll add on to all the comments so far about supporting the project and the design. And I am having a little trouble finding my plan set. Oh, now I know where it is. But anyway, I can't remember if it does have an EV charging place specified. So if staff can remind me if we have an EV charging spot, and if our current single-family code requires EV charging spots under any conditions.
Chair Pilch, that's right. In the building permit review process, we apply the requirements to make it a EV charger-ready garage.
Okay, our current requirements are EV charger ready. Okay, very good. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me of that. And I agree with the public speaker who says that, things have changed in dense areas such as our city, such that much of the city might be exempt from parking requirements starting January 1st. And maybe we'll exempt the entire city from parking requirements if it's just a piecework where parking requirements are still valid and applicable. I agree that that is a trend that is the right way to go in terms of fighting greenhouse gas and in terms of promoting livability. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'd like to say I support the project as well. I think it's got a nice layout. Interior plan looks good. I appreciate having a small JDU, junior ADU, giving us more options for a variety of living situations in the town. I think that's really important. Lifting it up, you're not really changing it much, and that's fine. It looks nice the way you've done it. I think it would be great to put a tree in the backyard or two. We have an urban reforestation, part of our climate action plan. And permeable pavers are always better, less hardscape, allows more water to be absorbed into the ground. Very good. Regarding the parking, I can support this in terms of the parking. There's a current garage. And I appreciate you moving the project back. There's certainly now effectively 2 parking spaces. You're right, in planning terms, that front yard space is not a legal space, but that's where everybody parks. So effectively there are 2 spaces. The idea of putting a second parking space in the front, we don't usually encourage that because you have to make a wider curb cut. You lose a curb space on the street, so you're not really changing anything. No net change there, so 1 parking space as is with 1 curb cut in the front yard is fine. And we do have climate action goals. We are, gradually trying to change mode from car-centered cities to more bike and transit and walking cities. And so in that sense, I support this reduction, and I agree there is a new state law coming January 1st that effectively in Albany will preempt any of our local parking requirements and not allow us to impose any parking minimums. So that's actually being taken out of our hands as a commission, and we have an all-electric building ordinance for new construction coming along, and this project would also fall under that because I think it's well over the 50% threshold for new construction. So you will be essentially be required to be an all-electric project if you apply if you put your building application in after the 1st of the year. So the new standards, new codes apply as of January 1st. So is there a motion?
I just have one clarification for planning director. Is the new energy code already effective? Because I'm just thinking about the EV ready provisions. I understand that the new energy code requires all new construction to be all electric ready. And would that then cover EV chargers also?
I'm glad to have our expert sitting next to me.
So the new state building code will require all new buildings to be electric ready. The Albany City Council just passed a resolution requiring all new buildings in Albany to be all electric. Mm-hmm. That will go into effect on January 8th, 30 days after the resolution was passed, and the state building codes go into effect on January 1st.
Okay. So all new construction projects, whether single family home or whatever, would have electrical chargers for vehicles.
Oh yeah, for EV chargers. Yeah, so that's the state building code for single family. They have to have EV chargers, just like an outlet form. Mm-hmm. And I think that's already the case for the 2019 building code, actually. And then we have some Albany specific requirements for multifamily buildings, but that's a slightly different thing.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Do we have a motion for this project?
I move to approve.
I will move the current project.
Second?
Second?
I don't know.
Okay, I can second.
Yeah, we all support it, so.
Okay. All right, let's vote. Commissioner Pilch, motion to approve. I see a yes. Commissioner Reek,
Yes.
Commissioner Moman,
Yes.
and I will vote yes as well. So that project is approved, 4-0. If there are story poles up, I don't know if there are on this project, then they're required to stay up for the 14-day appeal period, after which you're free to submit for your building permit. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to our next item, 7-2, PA 22-057, design review, conditional use permit, and parking exception for a second-story addition at 825 San Carlos Avenue. Director Bond, do we have a presentation?
Yes, I do. Bear with me, get this up. So again, another single-family home addition. This is at 825 San Carlos Avenue. It is a 3,751 square foot lot, currently a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 807 square foot home. The applicant is requesting design review approval, conditional use permit, and parking reduction approval for a second-story addition. This will ultimately lead to a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, 2,062 square feet with a height of 26 feet. This is the front elevation of the proposal. The entry is on the side of the house, as you're looking at the screen on the right-hand side. This is an oblique view that gives you a little bit better view of the front elevation. You can see the entry area over there. So it's kind of a covered area, so the door is behind that post. This is the north elevation and the south elevation. These are horizontal hardy plank siding, and then the vertical siding is, I understand, redwood planks. And this is the site plan. The parking, it's a similar parking to the previous item in that there would be one fully compliant off-street parking space and a second off-street parking space that would be in the front yard. What's happening with this project, the home right now, is roughly this footprint that I'm circling, and the addition expands to take out some of what is currently an existing driveway that goes all the way back to the rear corner of the property, I believe. So again, you can get 2 off-street parking spaces with the commission's approval, allowing that front yard exception. Again, no major comments from staff on this. We're recommending approval project with the standard conditions and findings. Be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for staff?
No.
Seeing none, is the applicant here? Would you like to give us a brief overview of your project?
I won't talk about the parking, but yeah, so like I just want to say that, you know, like I've worked in other towns, and I also echo what Todd said about working with Jeff and Christopher before. You know, I've worked with Todd before, and he actually found me a consultant to like work with the city staff because they just were not responsive. And with other cities, it's taken months to get a response, and it's very refreshing to just with email, like just in one day to get responses. And so I appreciate that. I've spoken to about 5 neighbors, like in the back and the adjacent and across, just to get their feedback, and they seem supportive. Like 2 of the neighbors were like very thankful. They said the prior owner had lived there for over 30 years. They had done no improvements, caused them to have to do a lot of work on the fences, and like there were rodents and things like that. And so they really didn't like that. So they appreciated that we are undertaking this improvement. The second story, we sort of copied the design element of the two adjacent houses where their second story is also smaller than their first ground floor, and it's stepped back from the street, so it doesn't look so massive. So we stepped it back in a very similar manner. And then we want to keep the front more or less original, but just like clad it to kind of like jazz it up, so make it more like a contemporary craftsman. So it's a combination of like fiber cement that kind of looks like wood, which I think is better from a rodent point of view, and like a termite point of view. And then we're having like redwood slats to create like more architectural interest. The square footage of the house is identical to the house next door. I think it's related to the floor area ratio. My big thing is to have like a giant great room and to have that in the back, facing the backyard, so you can really have like indoor, outdoor living. And so we spent some time on the landscape plan to facilitate that. The front where the original front door was, we're going to turn that into like a master suite with a little like yard in the front for the master suite. And then, yeah, we feel like it's something that like is updated and more contemporary for like modern living with a great room and then an extra bedroom. So yeah, so we spent some time like working through to try and come up with a house that's like, just like a better house than what's existing there right now. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions?
Sure.
Commissioner?
It's just a quick question. One, I really like the layout. I think and the materials you've selected look fantastic. So I think it's a very good-looking design. I did have a question about the entry, and obviously you moved it from the front to the side. Sure. Did you test various options for that? Because there's no defined path really now for an entry. It's a combined driveway entry, and I mean that's just kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that concept.
I mean, I think with the lot being 35 feet wide, the original entry, which is like very front of the house, the problem with that is if you want to have the great room in the back, you need to have like a very long hallway, and you're using up like very precious square footage. And so from a practical point of view, like the driveway is like fairly wide, and so we're kind of having that to double up as like the walkway to the front entry. I mean, it's not ideal, but just from a like pragmatic point of view, it kind of creates like the ability to like enter in and have a bit of a wow effect, like we're entering into this like great room, as opposed to entering into like a narrow corridor that's going all the way to the back.
Okay, other questions? Or I had a question. In the backyard, there's an existing tree, correct?
Yeah.
And it looks like you're planning on taking that out, and I was wondering why.
I chatted with the next door neighbor about that, and we were looking at it together. They said it had never been pruned, and so what we were going to try to do, because it has a lot of like off branches, so it's like multiple almost trunks. And so we're going to try to prune it in a way that instead of being so wide, it'll be like more tall and narrow and kind of go up like that. So I'd like to preserve it if I could.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to hear, actually.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions for the applicant? No, seeing none. Are there any public comments regarding this project from members of the public, either here or remotely?
We do have a hand raised on Zoom. Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I'm just going to mention the parking again. Just all the state laws and all this stuff just really doesn't make sense to me. I mean, as the person stated, the applicant stated, the driveway is very wide. Potentially to park another car. I just don't see why there isn't more action or more trying to have more off-street parking, more off-street electric parking. I mean, in a few years from now, 10 years from now, there's not going to be any more sale of gas-powered vehicles. Everything's going to be 100% electric. And there's only so many driveways that are having electric car charging stations, and there's less and less, availability. With all these exemptions, just less and less availability for the future of the vehicle industry to even charge. And so I see a problem in the future with this residence, that the people living there, let's say the house is sold, the people living there, where they're going to charge their vehicle, because there's only one space, and doesn't seem like there's any electric chargers for the street parking. I'm just wondering, is it possible for this situation? Is it possible for there to somehow be street parking that's still able to charge an electric vehicle without posing a tripping hazard, without running an extension cord across a sidewalk? I know on Cornell, every day I see this car at the end of the block at nighttime. So I'm not trying to get off the topic, but it's just this cord running across the sidewalk. The car's parked on the street and there's this cord running across the sidewalk to the house. And that's because, that it was approved, no off-street parking. So I'll try to stay on the agenda item. It's just, I would really like to see more applicants, try their best to create more off-street parking, electric, potentially electric vehicle charging off-street. I mean, that's the future that everything's going in. It's more climate action. So just thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
I'm happy to put in an EV car charger.
You will have one, and it can serve both spaces in front of the, so you could potentially be charging 2 cars there.
Yeah. My primary occupation is I work in the solar industry, and I have an EV car charger that is attached to my solar inverter. So during the daytime, it charges at like double the rate because the sun is literally powering the chargers. It's kind of cool. And so I'm a huge believer in that sort of thing.
Okay, great. And no other public comment?
I'm not seeing any other public comment.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and close public comment, and the commission will deliberate. Thank you. Commissioners, any comments? Anybody like to start off?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start off. I really like the layout, the look of the home. I think it's very attractive, what you've, the current design, or the new design, I should say. It's just the front door is pushed back and hidden, and it's unfortunate because the width of the site that it's driveway sort of doing double duty here. But I understand why it was designed that way. But I think the materials you've selected look, very attractive. I also am a big supporter of your window alignment and the windows that you've selected so far. So it's, I'm supportive of this plan.
Okay, I can go next.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Mr. Muhammad,
I
please.
echo a lot of Commissioner Rick's comments. This is a huge addition in terms of ground coverage, lot coverage, and FAR increase. But you have been careful, to match that with the adjacent properties, so it doesn't look out of proportion. It goes very well with the 2 properties on either side, and you have been careful to step the addition back from the street, which would also have good impact on the street. So I like all those moves. I like the contemporary traditional style, and I also like the roof structure that you have developed, which also complements the other structures, other houses, adjacent houses. and I like the gable windows that creates a nice, play in the roof profiles. So yeah, overall it's a good project, and I am happy to support.
All right, Commissioner Pilch, any comments?
Well, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll just follow on. Yeah, I really like this project. It's nice, kind of nice balance of more modern contemporary elements and maintaining some traditional elements in the front to maintain some contextual approach to the neighborhood. It's attractively designed. The window, I like the window placement. It all seems to have a logic and just a nice look to it. So I'd like to compliment you on that. I appreciate the effort to keep the tree in the back. It would be good to keep it if you can. And if you can, I would encourage you to plant another tree or two in the back. The entryway, I get it in terms of circulation space. You don't want to have a big, long corridor down the middle. My house, I remodeled it, and we had the entrance in the front, and we had to go through the living room, and it basically became, the living room was kind of a glorified hallway. So we moved it to the center, so more centralized, same thing. Gives you much better internal flow. You might take out that little wing wall at the dining room to allow you to turn left sooner, but anyway. Just one note, architectural circulation note. And I don't know if there's some way to, I noticed you have some planting on the side of the driveway by the house, or maybe there's some way to accommodate some sort of little change in paving or something as you're going towards the entrance. So try to scoot the car over a little bit. I don't know how you could do that. It's not a lot of space, but it would be better to have some sort of pathway, even if it's same level, maybe change in paving there or something to indicate entry. So things to think about. Otherwise, I don't really have any other comments. And would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I can move for approval.
We have a motion to approve. Second?
I can second.
All right. We'll go to vote. Commissioner Pilch? I see a yes. Commissioner Reek?
Yes.
Commissioner Moman?
Yes.
And I will vote yes also. So your project is approved. That is, yeah, PA 2207057. That motion carries. And please leave any story polls up if you have them up, or for the 14-day appeal period. So thank you. All right, next item, moving on to Section 8, new business. Item 8-1, review of preliminary applications for in-street outdoor dining parklets on Solano Avenue.
I'd like to introduce, I think you've met my colleague Michelle Plaus in the past. Michelle will be making this presentation, and our colleagues Brendan Brown and Justin Freed are on Zoom as well and may be brought in as necessary.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. As Jeff said, I'll be making this presentation reviewing the preliminary parklet applications that we have. And I'll just start with a little bit of background. So throughout this year, the Transportation Commission, Economic Development Committee, and Planning and Zoning Commission have all provided feedback to staff on new regulations for our outdoor dining parklets for a long-term program. And those regulations were adopted by the council in September based on the feedback from the committee and commissions. And since then, staff have been...
Hearing crickets.
Okay. So as I was saying, council adopted those regulations in September, and since then, staff have been conducting outreach with the parklet owners. We created a preliminary application, and the parklet owners have begun to plan their upgrades. So that's what we'll be discussing tonight. Looking into the future, the permit applications for the parklets are due on January 31st, and we're expecting construction of the parklets to be completed by May 31st in preparation for summer outdoor dining. So I won't go into a lot of detail here on all of the parklet regulations. They're pretty extensive and in the packets that we sent out for the meeting. But they cover a variety of topics, including the location and setbacks of the parklets, platforms, perimeter barriers, the materials used, disability access, maintenance and fire safety, signage, insurance, a couple of other minor things as well. For the Planning and Zoning Commission review, there's really three things that are really essential. The first is that for parklets that want to use 3 parking spaces, they're required to get approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's something we went over with you all last time we were here to talk about this. So that's a major thing. There's also Planning and Zoning Commission review for materials, in particular for alternative materials that aren't pre-approved with the regulations. And then we're also hoping to get sort of general design feedback from the commission as well. So with that in mind, I'll just go into a little bit of detail about the sort of the main construction of the parklet and the regulations there, starting with the platform and perimeter barriers. So a freestanding platform is recommended for the parklets. It's not required if the street surface is acceptable and meets the ADA requirements. However, that's not the case probably for most parklets, and all the applications we have in so far do indicate they plan to put in platforms. For the platforms, a modular design is preferred, in particular so that maintenance workers can get to underground utilities if necessary, and also helps for cleaning and things like that. Again, not technically required. And then there is also a requirement of a perimeter barrier that is 36 to 42 inches high, a wall or a railing that's able to withstand 200 pounds of lateral force, so equivalent to basically a deck railing requirement. And then for materials, the regulations state that the materials should be of metal, wood, or other natural materials. And alternative materials can be allowed if approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We also highly encourage plant materials and lighting. So with all those things in mind, I'll just kind of run briefly through the actual parklet applications. We have 12 parklets. 11 of them are in-street parklets, with one being a sidewalk-only parklet. That's Solano Junction. You can see on the map at the bottom left here, they're distributed throughout Solano, in particular along the western side. And so most of these are smaller parklets. Rendezvous is only one parallel space. We have 6 two-space parklets, as you can see. Those ones with the asterisks, I/Suzettes and Chez Monceau, those are currently 3 spaces, but the applications have indicated they plan to reduce them to 2-space parklets. And then we have 4 3-space parklets, Everest Kitchen, Bois Long, Zaytoun, and Barney's. So these are the ones that would need the approval from the commission to have those 3 spaces. And I have Everest Kitchen and Bois Long highlighted here because those are the 2 that are going to be going through a much more significant remodel. We're expecting Zaytoun and Barney's to have pretty minor changes, if any. And so potentially the commission could give them approval for the 3 spaces tonight based on what they already have existing, and then they could finish up with staff through the permit process. For Everest Kitchen and Bois Long, you could give potentially like a preliminary approval of the 3 spaces. They can continue through the planning process, and then they could come back to the commission. That's our recommendation. But we can get into more detail in that into the discussion section. For these 2-space parklets, they don't need commission approval for the 2 spaces. About half of them are going to be doing some major changes, and another half are probably going to stay roughly the same, adding in platforms, but not too much other than that. And so for those, we're mainly seeking sort of general design review and guidance. And with that, I'll just sort of say our staff recommendation is the feedback on those three things: the design and materials for the parklets, the preliminary approval of those 3-space parklets, and then whether, which parklets you think need additional commission review versus finishing the process just with staff. And I do have a sort of worksheet for us to go through to sort of organize all of the feedback on that, so we can go through that together during the discussion section of this item. And with that, I'm happy to take questions to start off.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Are there questions for Michelle?
Can I start?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Commissioner Momin?
Yes, I would like to know, of the parklets that are using 2 spaces and that don't need commission's review, but some of them are. Okay, sorry. It's all right, yeah. I'm also kind of too soft-spoken. Yeah. So what I wanted to know is, there are a few parklets that use just 2 parking spaces and they don't need commission's review. But some of them don't want to update their design. They want to maintain whatever they have built currently. Is that correct?
So there are some parklets that already have a more substantial parklet in place, and they're going to be doing some upgrades to meet our new requirements.
Okay.
But they'll be more minor.
Okay.
And then there are some parklets that are basically taking out what they have and putting in something totally
Got it,
new.
okay.
None of those need this commission approval for the spaces. We're just kind of looking for general design guidance
Got it.
on those, and some of them are sort of more extensive and some are
Okay.
less extensive.
So you have reviewed the ones that would be maintained and they mostly follow the new guidelines, and if they don't, they would do the minor adjustments to follow.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll, on the staff level, we'll be making sure that they all come to the regulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you provided some preliminary applications, which were just like 1-page application, and there is a section that asks for a description of the design, which is kind of very, short, not sufficient, and some people have just answered yes, no, yes, no. So does the city have any list of requirements for submittal that would include plans, sections, details, and elevations and all that? And because this is, a different kind of permit, this is not like a typical planning permit or a building permit, which has kind of a checklist to follow. So do we have a separate checklist for these permits, or they would be following the checklist that is available for the general planning permits?
So I agree with your comment that the applications that we received were, in some respects, quite brief and don't illuminate a lot about what we might expect. We'll be mostly applying the standards that we worked with the commission on preparing and the council adopted. We'll probably not use our standard planning application just because there's more in there that's not applicable. So we're trying to customize this and make it easy as possible for the restaurants. Mm-hmm. So we're adapting as we go along. I think we will want to see a fairly well-developed, maybe not to the level you might develop a building level plans, but we'll want to see something to scale with materials called out, and in particular wanting to make sure that the slopes and all those connections on the handrails and so forth are going to comply.
Right. And more, importantly, location-specific plans, like some of the applicants have included like very generic, drawings, but it would be, good to see how they fit in the actual context, with whatever, there might be, accessible parking, there might be curb ramps, and stuff like that, and how they actually fit, in those parking spaces.
Yes, we'll want dimensions and that kind of information, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all I wanted to ask.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, just a quick question for tonight. Were we going to review these or one by one? Are you requesting sort of individual comment, kind of per application, or just sort of I'm just curious what the ask is of the commissioners for tonight.
Yeah, I'll hand out to you in just a moment here, and I'll put it on the screen too. I have sort of a worksheet matrix with each of these, so we can kind of go through one by one. Thanks. And some of them probably will need not much comment from you, but just gives us a chance to kind of go through them in turn.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Pilch, I can't see you. Do you have questions for staff?
No question, but I'm afraid my health is declining a bit tonight. And I'm going to ask that you make me a participant, and I'll bow out of the rest of the meeting as a commission member and listen as a participant.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to hear that.
Yes, I think we're sorry to hear that. I'll go ahead and do that now. Is that correct, Chair Pilch? Okay.
She may, thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo Commissioner Moman's comment about checklist or some standard that each applicant would follow to give us a plan, maybe, street view, two side views, maybe a section if it's appropriate, and then photos. I would really like to see photos, especially of the ones that are existing and that we're potentially going to approve tonight, or, I don't have an encyclopedic memory of what they're all looking like, and, so.
We can also pull up Google Maps images as we get to discussion.
Okay. I would appreciate that, because I don't really feel comfortable approving something that I am not 100% sure what it looks like right now. So that's it for me. Now, is there seeing there's no more questions for staff, are there any public comments regarding the parklet issue? If you'd like to approach the podium and speak, please. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Happy holidays. Thanks for all the work you do. I used to do this in Mill Valley for Park and Rec. I know how hard the job is. I'm the owner of Toyground. We've been on Solano for 46 years. I have had no parking in front of my business since the parklet broke the recommendations to stick to 2 spaces. I've called the city for a year and a half. Everybody tried to help. Michelle, Brennan, everybody tried to help. The police came out, the traffic control, the mayor, the restaurateur would not cooperate or compromise. He actually takes up the 2 spaces he's allowed, one on the other side, which is the end of the block. My picture of my store was on the first photograph. If you can pull that back up again, I could show you what I'm talking about. On the other side, towards the bank, he parks his car. Traffic control knows this. Nothing can be done because he moves it frequently, or the marks don't appear. After calling the city over and over again, I gave up. Nobody could get him to comply. No compromise could be reached by anyone from the city with the owner. They tried over and over again. They did their best. All businesses deserve fair treatment. My son is a chef. He actually worked at that restaurant. I'm not against the parklets. I'm all for them, but it's driving me out of business. My customers have little kids. We're in the business of recycling toys as well as selling new ones. They need their strollers, they need their 2 bags of toys, and they're parking 3 and 4 blocks away. It was always tough, but now it's impossible. During the rainy weather, I've taken hundreds of pictures half the time, 75% of the time, even when the weather is nice, there's nobody there. Sometimes he puts a sign up on his door saying, I'm closed from 4:30 to 6:30. I'm closed at 6. There was no compromise that could be made about the parking. I'm desperate. It's important that you don't make it as easy as possible for the restaurants, that you make it fair and easy for everybody to have parking on Solano. I was last year for the Bike Coalition. Parking is still an issue, whether you're in a house or in a business. I really want you to think about the rest of the businesses, not just the restaurants. I feel left out. After 46 years, my business brings so many people to Solano. They don't just drop off their toys, they go eat. Somebody along the way, and I don't remember who, got rid of the parking meters, which were giving people tickets after an hour. So they could come to my store, go to the restaurant. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Just to clarify, what's the restaurant next to your?
Seamus Shore.
Okay,
And if you pull up that first picture you had, my business is right over there.
okay, thank you.
We made it through the water tanks in front of our store. We made it through a lot, but this is difficult.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments, remote or?
We used to go shopping there all the time. Say that again?
Any other remote comments? Yes.
Nobody wants us to go out of business. We're a community institution.
We can't hear you talking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're going to hear another public comment. Thank you. Yes.
She just said, we love your store. We're a public institution and community center. Please don't drive us to Berkeley or somewhere else. We don't want to go. Parking is essential for my business.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So-
Happy holidays.
Okay, thank you.
So we do have a,
One more public speaker, please. Okay, thank you.
Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff Bond. Hey, yeah, you know, the parklets it's a big topic for sure. Obviously, there's community members who have issues with them and people who like them. It's just trying to find a balance, right? So that way we all get along and all of our businesses stay successful. And number one, keeping safety in mind. Now, with the concern of safety, you know, these things, now we're putting people in the street. I know they're parking spaces, but now we have human beings sitting in parking spaces eating food. Meanwhile, traffic driving by is going at 25 miles an hour down Solano because the 15-mile-an-hour signs haven't been posted yet. So cars are speeding down Solano. And for the off chance of a car to veer off direction and run into a parklet, to put people at risk, to put people's lives at risks, for a business to make money, it's kind of sick. I mean, these structures, I mean, 200 pounds, a car pushes more than 200 pounds. I mean, I don't know where we got this 200-pound from. I mean, a human being, a strong person can push 200 pounds. 200 pounds doesn't stop a car or an AC Transit bus. So that 200 pounds, it should be 2,000 pounds. I mean, how much does a car weigh, right? 4,000 pounds. You know, and how close to the street are those parklets? I mean, inches from flowing traffic. So another concern is these plants. You guys encourage plants, but you don't encourage maintaining them. I don't know how many times I've pulled weeds and grass on the planter boxes in front of Five Tacos. It's just these plants are out of control. And you encourage plants, but when you back out of a spot, if you're west of the parklet, you can't see oncoming traffic. And a lot of these parklets are too high. It blocks the view. So I wouldn't encourage plants because they don't get properly maintained. And they're too high. And also ADA. I mean, Bossburger still isn't ADA accessible. So why aren't they all ADA accessible? So if you're gonna have these parklets, at least they gotta be ADA accessible if that's the requirement. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Yes, please, next speaker.
Hi. I am for parklets because I think it's wonderful to see people out on the street coming from Europe and not understanding why people are not eating outside on the streets, making it more living. We don't need all these cars. We have public transportations. We have bicycle. Albany is fantastic because we have all these bike paths. We have sidewalks. It's wonderful to see an alive town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? One more person in the room. Okay, thank you very much.
No other speakers are raising.
No more remote. Okay, well, we'll close public comment and we will move to commission deliberations on this issue. And would anyone like to start?
No, I will just ask the same question that Commissioner Rick asked. Like, how do we go about this? Like, are we going to discuss each parklet one by one and then approve or not approve? Or
Yeah, so my thought with this, if it's useful to the commission, is that we can go through each of the parklets listed here. You'll find in the first row with the parklet name, we have sort of a brief description of how much it's changing, the number of spaces or question, and then whether staff recommends that it come back for a commission review or whether it can go through to staff only. And so we can go through each one of these in turn, and I can kind of make notes as we go to keep track of all of your comments, and feel free to write in whatever you'd like in the sheet that you have. We can also pull up the image of the parklets onto the screen if that's helpful.
sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, we can start with Barney's, and I think Jeff is pulling that up now.
Okay, and do you have any other questions
and
or
these-
comments? I may not.
Are any of these, some of these will be brand-new installations, or many of these are ones that have been installed and are coming back or just being maintained?
That's right. These are all current parklets that are
Got it.
being upgraded.
Okay, nothing new. Okay.
And I guess I have a question. So for 3-space parklets, at our discretion, we can deny the third space based on context, feedback, whatever.
That's correct.
And what would be the criteria? Like, would the city be?
We didn't specify any particular criteria. I think it would probably be balancing the needs of and impacts of the restaurateur versus neighboring businesses, if there was a safety consideration that maybe we've missed that you see that we should take into consideration, that would be another example.
Okay, and then is city going to monitor the use, intensity of use? Because as you know, some people have observed that some of the parklets are not fully occupied, even if they are occupying 3 or 2 spaces. So how would we monitor that? And like, would there be any,
We have been relatively flexible and have not come down hard on enforcement matters across the board. I think we're proposing to change our posture on that. And for example, if someone applies for 2 spaces, it needs to be 2 spaces, period, and it can't kind of flow over into that 3rd space a little bit, which is, I think, the example that we heard from the member of the public. And the same goes with accessibility. We're intending to enforce accessibility in the parklet at the same level that we enforce it inside a restaurant, which is we try to make it compliant, period. And that's just not only for the good of the people who have a disability that want to enjoy the restaurant, but also to avoid legal exposure both for the restaurateur and for the city. So we will have a stronger enforcement presence than we have historically, as we're kind of making the transition from hopefully not a temporary pandemic-related measure to this is really a new way of using our urban spaces, hopefully for the longer term.
And would you consider any restrictions in terms of number of parklets on one block? Because that would, impact.
That would be for the commission to consider. I think there is
Because there are some blocks where there are more than one parklets, so what would be the process for that? Like, would there be before we approve those, would there be a public hearing, like, objections from the community or anything?
So the regulations don't set a limit on number of parklets per block, but that would be a consideration for the commission to decide to give 3 spaces to a parklet is potentially how many other parklets and spaces there are on that block
But
or in that area.
If, let's say there are 3 proposed parklets on one side of the block, and they are all asking 2 spaces, and so in that case would basically they would not trigger commission approval, but then city would go ahead and approve that, or it would come to the commission as a special case.
As the regulations are written, there's no maximum. That was something that was kind of floated as a possible regulation and decided against it. Theoretically, if it got to a breaking point, I suppose that could come back as a special case. But as it is now, if they're 2-space parklets, there isn't a maximum number per block.
Okay.
Just to go back a little bit about the Chez Mansour situation. They were occupying more than they were allotted. Was that the case, or what am I not understanding here? Is there something else going on that, I mean, their new application is, or current application is for 2 spaces, right? So,
I'd like to bring up the image of that. I think you'll see what's going on there. Bear with me a second as I'm navigating down.
I mean, we could go through them in order and get to that one, but I guess I'm just curious and would like the public to understand what's going on.
So what you're seeing here there's one space here where the planters are that's not really being used for, well, there is one little table there. This is the parking space in question. And then there are 2 more spaces that are more regularly used. And so as we're interpreting the application, this space would be made available, fully available for vehicles.
So they would remove those planters and then just put a barricade or something on the side?
Right, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I can see what's happening now a little more clearly.
And also in terms of visibility of parking spaces, like having that just one parking space on the other side of the parklet, people may not quickly realize that there is available space. And so in that situation, would the city advise maybe move it up little, one space? Because in this, I don't know whether they have to be exactly opposite the business, or they can be slightly offset so that, not just one isolated parking space is available, there could be a pair so people can, notice them easily.
Yeah, I think we don't have any requirement about which parking space is used, if it has to be directly in front of the business. So that would be a commission comment if you think that the parklet should be moved so that it's up against the edge there and that the free space is the one that's near the other parking spaces. There's no requirement for it one way or the other, but that would be a perfectly legitimate commission comment on that.
As long as we hear it, we review it. If it is 2, space parklet, then we may not review that and we would not have opportunity to suggest that. Particularly in this case, where it is close to bulb out. Typically, if it is close to bulb out, it is natural, like it is an extension of bulb out. And so whatever like spillover of use and people occurs in the parklet can occur at the bulb out. And also that one isolated parking space is not isolated from the rest of the parking row, so it can be used efficiently. In this case, it is kind of a disadvantage of that situation which has arrived because of that separation between two parking spaces. So yeah, I would, if not, we review the designs of the two parking space parklet, I would suggest the city to look at that and and review.
Okay. Why don't we go get started? Seems like.
Yep.
We'll start with Barney's. Yeah, let's just try to work through these. We'll have to be somewhat efficient, I think.
I would just add that as we start to work through this, if you're feeling like you need more information from us in order to provide us guidance, we can always come back. We do want to get this process closed so that they can open for business this spring and be, by the end of May is the target that City Council gave us. But if you do need, please let us know if you feel like you would need more information. We're happy to provide that.
Yeah, we have it's 6 months, right? And I'm assuming you could construct a parklet in a month or something, or one of these structures. So, okay, well, we'll just make that decision on a case-by-case basis then. So we're looking, this is
Barney's?
Barney's?
Yes, this is Barney's. This is a 3-space parklet, and it's pretty much entirely in compliance right now. There might be a few minor things that they need to change, but we're expecting it to basically stay as it is.
Well, in this case, this one, it's got a nice wood enclosure. It's got a nice little roof area. It just seems like it does what it's supposed to do, and I have no objection.
Yeah, I had a question on the cones. So the cones, are they their cones, and they wouldn't impact that other parking space, right? I don't know, I'm just seeing it in the photo, so obviously if it's their cones.
They actually are the city cones. We put those out as
Oh, okay.
a way to help improve visibility.
Yeah, I had a comment, sorry, if
You
you're
had a
not
comment?
finished.
Yeah, go ahead. Just had a
Yes,
question
I
about
had
this.
the comment about the cones actually, because of the cones, they look very temporary, and, doesn't look visually appealing. One of the items in the program guidelines is, use of reflective, striping and some other, design measures that would enhance the safety. So even if we are approving, some of these parklets, I would recommend, to stop using the traffic cones and, do design updates that would enhance the safety. Yeah, but I agree with my fellow commissioners. I like this parklet, and I particularly like the planter boxes integrated with the barrier wall. That creates nice ambience there. And even though it has a hard roof, it is quite open as compared to some of the parklets on the stretch.
Great, and so I'm taking this to mean the commission is approving, or at least preliminary approving, this 3 spaces?
Well, maybe we should take a vote then. I mean, we should vote on each one, I suppose. Or is this, how do you see the process working?
Just for kind of efficiency of time, we were thinking of working through this list, and if there was a consensus on everything, you could vote on
It after.
all at once.
Or as a
And then
motion
if
to
there's
approve as noted, okay.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I would say this one also looks structurally solid. And just to clarify, these do not go through a building permit. The structures aren't engineered per se, or no requirements for plan check.
We will inspect them, have our inspector check them out. Strictly speaking, they are a structure, but they're not going through the normal plan check process. It's not like a building with a foundation and typical utilities, but we would be checking, for example, the structure of the barriers, not the barriers, the railings, to make sure that's compliant, make sure that the electrical connections are appropriate. So it's kind of a hybrid inspection process.
So even if they're not applying for a new permit, and if it's an existing structure, they'd still go through the inspection?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And a lot of these, we weren't planning to get into the details, but a lot of these really need to have the electrical aspects of it looked at carefully and probably upgraded in some situations.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Say two.
I'm fine with this one, or we're
too.
good with this,
Keep going.
with
Yep.
Barney's. We have consensus, it looks good. Okay, next.
So next we have Zaytoon. This is another one with 3 spaces, also mostly built out. We're expecting relatively few changes. Though I think we are expecting them to build a platform, is that right? Yeah, we're expecting them to put in a platform and also some other minor changes to fit with the regulations. This is another one where staff is recommending that this doesn't need to come back for additional commission review.
Very similar, has a fence-like structure around it, posts that look supported at the base, nice little roof. Are the barrels on the street necessary? They strike me as not being
Right.
necessary.
And they also kind of look cluttered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would look a little cleaner, a little simpler. And just to go back to the railing is not meant to protect from cars. It's meant to protect people from inadvertently falling into the street or somehow falling into the street. It's like a deck railing, exactly. So just to clarify that for the public. I think the barrels look kind of cluttered to me in this case. And in some ways, we're looking for a little homogeneity between the different parklets. I mean, not necessarily, they all have to be the same, but, and these extend more into the street. I think these might even be presenting a little bit of a hazard for cyclists, a little less space for cyclists. And I agree with the comments about the cones. The cones make it all look like a traffic or a Caltrans work zone or something, so definitely, providing reflective tape or even brighter paint for some of these parklets might be a good idea.
Yeah, our regulations do state that the perimeter barrier should have a reflective tape on the top, so I think we're expecting to replace the cones with those, just generally speaking.
Yeah, okay.
I would agree with the barrels. I think it would be more successful if they want to add planting to have it on the ledge or inside the parklet itself. Certainly not a hazard for cyclists that way, so that would be my comment.
Yeah,
as well.
I agree with that too. I just want, in your presentation earlier, you mentioned that planting is preferred, but I would rather, make it more than preferred, like if this particular case, if they remove the barrels, they would remove the plants also, and it's the plant that make it more beautiful. So I would, like to recommend, a stronger preference for planting. So they should find out some way to, add plant. Maybe there could be some hanging planters, linear planters along, that barrier wall or something.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but the barrels may even be projecting into the space, the little setback space that's required.
Right.
It's really hard to tell. And it looks like their railing is too short, but that's part of their upgrade process. They'll deal with that.
Yeah, we will make sure that they meet the setback and railing requirements. So. Any other comments?
Just one observation. There is a barrier between the bulb out and the parklet. Oh, there is a bench. Okay, then it's okay.
I mean, it looks like the parklet extends over the bulb out a little bit, onto the bulb out. Is that technically in compliance, or? I mean,
I don't remember the interior, how that works. We do want to make sure that the sidewalk functions for pedestrians and that, and for the utility systems and so forth. So we'll have to take another look at that.
well, maybe the park space angles back to the corner and not just squaring it up, and, you know, maybe that's fine.
I don't recall a step inside of that
Yeah,
parklet,
okay,
so it may just be catching the corner there.
okay. I mean, I do look at these structures, and there are some structural elements to it that are important. You know, wind load is a factor on these roofs. They're like wings that can have uplift, and, you know, they can be blown around a little bit. So, you know, there are structural considerations. And how they make the connections at the top and the little cross braces and everything, how they're connected is really important for its stability.
That will be one of the things our building inspector.
You know, that's kind of just an engineering, basic engineering thing.
And we will be requiring a licensed contractor to do any of this work. So hopefully that person will just naturally want to build it properly.
Want to avoid liability themselves, yeah. Okay, great. Okay, I think we have consensus that that one's fine.
Yeah, I did have a question. We did get an email from some public comment, somebody at the YMCA, regarding parking in this neighborhood and difficulty for parkers. Just
That's right.
something to consider, especially in this one is right around the corner from the YMCA. So I don't know if we want to consider that as we discuss this particular parklet. But it was a comment. It's right on the corner of Canes, and Canes is where the YMCA is, just down the street. So we want to throw that one into discussion at all, but we did receive that.
Right, the letter was
Forget about it.
kind of in general, like
Kind of, yeah.
requesting more parking, kind of, or lamenting the impact. But, well, I'm inclined to support the parklets over parking. In general, there was widespread public support for that. I think it's a better use of public space in general, creates a much livelier street, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and in fact, in this area, it's not very cluttered with parklets. Doesn't appear to, there's a couple, but they're not on every. Just want to throw that in there. Okay.
So is that a consensus to approve the 3 spaces for this one?
I'm for the 3 spaces as is, yeah.
I'm for it.
Excellent. So next we have Everest Kitchen. This is another 3-space parklet, but it's going to have a much more extensive upgrade and bigger design changes here. In their application, they mentioned having concrete for the platform and perimeter barriers. However, that's generally not recommended by staff, and also they're not allowed to have any permanent and anything fixed permanently to the street. So that's something that's up for the commission. Potentially the commission can approve concrete, although it would still have to fit into our regulations and the way that they use it. So that's one thing to note here.
And are there any utilities in those areas that would be, covered by concrete if they use concrete?
Sorry, say that again?
Are there any utilities in those 3 parking spaces that are proposed to be converted into parklet?
There probably is. I mean, there's certainly utilities, underground connections. Most of the utility access covers are in the sidewalk, but
Okay.
it's not uncommon to have to come in and dig up a sewer line or a water line or something like that. That unfortunately happens a lot. And that's one of the issues with having it concrete, is it just
Right.
makes it that much more complicated. And usually when those things have to happen, they have to happen very quickly.
Right, but unless they use concrete pavers with, tiny pedestals.
Right. The pedestal system is a different thing. That would be fine.
Right, but you can use a pedestal system for concrete pavers also, not just wood. So you can recommend them if they want, insist on concrete surface.
Yeah, they didn't add much detail about exactly what they meant by concrete, so it's possible they meant that, but you could propose that as an option. There's also some examples of businesses using concrete K-rails that are painted with various scenes as a perimeter barrier, so that's something you could recommend if they wanted to use concrete. Or you could say, we really don't want concrete, use a natural material, something else.
Okay.
Well, I guess without a little more specificity, I mean, I can't really approve.
This one we
concrete.
want to bring back to you.
Yes.
Yes, maybe when they get their design, I mean, in theory, I would be okay with their 3-space usage, but I wouldn't want to necessarily approve or sign off on the actual design of that enclosure and surface.
And I think in particular, one thing that's helpful for this one is to get a sense from the commission if you are willing to approve the 3 spaces and what you would expect to see for that, so that when they're writing up the plans, they can have a 3-space plan, or if they know that's not likely, they might do a 2-space plan instead. That sort of feedback is what's really useful here for tonight.
Well, I'm okay with the 3-space usage or conditional use permit. So I'm comfortable with that. Are the other commissioners comfortable with 3 spaces?
I'm
there?
okay too, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my feeling, unless there's some really, really compelling reason not to do 3 spaces, I'm inclined to go with it. Well, I think in general, we probably want to see, nicer wood fence-like enclosures or,
Right.
But, I'm open to some creativity. I actually like the one that's the rusted barrels. I mean, it's like, I like that one. I'll probably get a few others that don't, but.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, we'll see. I'd like to see nicer materials there. Okay, what's next?
So this one is Bois Long. This is the rusted barrel one you were talking about.
Rusted barrel.
This is our final 3-space parklet, another one that's going to have much more significant upgrades. And this is another one that we're recommending come back to the commission for approval once we have more detailed plans. We did get, sorry, let me pull up their application.
I mean, to me, this one, it's like kind of like an ad hoc street food kind of stall or something you would see.
It would actually be helpful if I shared this, probably.
But I can see why it could be a little more uniform and, simplified, but.
So this is the preliminary application they put in. So for the perimeter barrier, they have a paver wall and or redwood fence boards, and then the platform composite decking, and they attach some images. So this is the paver wall that they're thinking about, and redwood fencing. So this is what they're imagining for the new design, materials-wise.
Yeah, well, I guess we'd have to see how they put it together. It's really, some dry stacked stones or pavers of some kind, I think that would be acceptable. It's done well. But it just depends on how they do sections of wood, sections of stone. I don't know how they're planning on doing it, but. So this is another, I'm fine with 3 spaces. I suppose some of these decisions come down to whether they find it useful and have the staffing to do it, and they actually, serve enough people to justify it.
Yeah, I'm fine with the 3 spaces as well, so, yeah, look forward to seeing how they put that together in their application.
Excellent. Okay, should we go to the next one? This is 5 Tacos and Beers. This is a 2-space parklet. And we're expecting the final version to look relatively similar to this one, with some upgrades to meet the current regulations, but roughly similar to how it is now.
So we will be working with this applicant for some of the layout on the sidewalk area.
Yeah.
The seating right there on the bulb out is problematic, and we have some safety concerns about that. We've already talked to him about it, and it hasn't moved yet. But the way our standards are written, there's not to be any seating between 2 curb ramps, so kind of that diagonal. In this diagonal area, we want to keep that as clear as possible so the motorist can see a pedestrian. You know, if there's a pedestrian walking along Solano and this white car, as an example, is making a right turn, it might be a little bit hard to see the pedestrian.
Right.
So we're looking to see that, keep that clear zone. And then there's a lot going on right around here. There's some tree wells and a bike rack and a fire hydrant and so forth, and that needs some fine tuning. We're hoping to be able to work that out with them. But if we need your guidance on that, we'll be bringing it back to you.
Isn't that
Okay.
really a separate permit, separate conditional use permit, sidewalk seating versus parklet?
Strictly speaking, yes, but I think in this case, because it has both elements, it's going to play into each other. If they lose seating on the sidewalk, it's possible they'll come back and want a larger parklet. And so I think we want to sort of look at it holistically, and that may involve bringing it back to you if we can't work out what seems to be an obvious good solution.
Well, yeah, I agree with the sight lines. I think that's really important. Sometimes you have little kids that are walking along and you can't see them with low barriers, especially if people are sitting there, it's very blocked off. You know, I support the sidewalk seating also, you know, as long as there are the clearances along the sidewalk for clear path of travel, per minimum requirements, ADA, et cetera. I will note this seems to be the most popular one. It's pretty packed. So,
It is a surprise that they only have two, that they're not applying for a 3rd spot, but yeah, it's laid it out nicely.
So what do we need to decide for this one? Anything at this moment, or?
Yeah, so if you have any general feedback on the design as it is right now, and then we recommend that this doesn't need to come back to the commission unless, as Jeff said, we have an issue with them. So any feedback on that recommendation as well?
I personally liked the ambience of the parklet, you know, with a lot of plants, and instead of hard roof, they are using umbrella, you know, canopies, which creates a better outdoor dining environment. What I did not much like is the barrier wall, which kind of spans between 2 wine barrels, and because of that, it cannot close it properly, and it kind of looks unfinished. So I would really recommend them to take the barrels out of the structure and have a nice seamless wall. And keep the plants that are like in the heart of the the design.
You know, I would agree with that. It looks a little unfinished. It looks a little ad hoc. Yeah, I think a cleaner kind of enclosure would be better. I mean, here's an example of planter boxes hanging off the wall. I think do a good job for, providing some greenery without being too obstructive. The canopies, provide some color.
Right.
They've got a lot of heating towers, which I don't think are great for global warming, et cetera, but that's a separate approval by the fire marshal. I mean, we really should be limiting our use of those things as much as possible. I mean, I get it, it's cold out some nights and it's hard to sit there, but it'd be nice if we weren't burning fossil fuels. And if they are inside an enclosure, a parklet, kind of an enclosed parklet, that's creating serious health hazards in terms of gas. And so in a way, keeping it open is better for air quality for people sitting there breathing those fumes. So something to consider for the ones that are more enclosed.
Yeah, I agree on the perimeter barricade. I think the wine barrels, while they look playful and fun, they do look a little like they might topple over. But yeah, I think that can be tightened up and look a little bit more permanent.
Great, and then the recommendation of staff that this doesn't need to come back to the commission, assuming we can work out the sidewalk seating.
Okay.
I agree.
Great.
Yeah, agreed.
Great, and next we have Boss Burger. So this is a 2-space parklet. It's going to have more changes. As you can see right now, they have the K-rails, but they're planning to put in wood fences as the perimeter barrier instead. And that's about as much information as we have right now. So this is another 2-space one, so this doesn't need to go through Planning and Zoning Commission review. We think we can do it just among staff. So we'd love, if you want to have it back, you can tell us, and otherwise just give us any feedback on what you'd like to see here.
Well, when this came to us as the general issue, a number of commissioners specifically said we did not like the orange K-rails. And I think we even say that in our regulation, that those are not to be included as approved materials because they just look like a Caltrans work zone. So anyway, I'm glad to know that they're changing it and will redesign it. So, and they have to obviously level it. I think none of these sloping parking spaces will meet ADA requirements at all. Plus the barrier getting down the curb. Yeah, so they all pretty much have to do a level.
Yeah, they're planning a wooden platform as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this looks because.
So you would like to see this one come back, you think?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
I don't. I'm confident you could,
And again, if it's not consistent with the themes that you're talking about this evening with the others, we will err on the side of giving you a shot at it. Or I can check in with the chair at a minimum to get a second opinion before we make a final decision if it's kind of on the bubble.
Okay.
Okay, next we have a shared parklet between Suzette's Crepes and Ice Slice. This is one that's currently 3 spaces, but is planned for 2 spaces going forward. So they're planning to put in aluminum or steel perimeter barriers. They said it was going to be black and a wood platform. They also mentioned a variety of planters, wood, concrete, and terracotta, and metal tables and chairs. So we're expecting it to look very different from how it looks in this picture. So yeah, again, any comments you have on what you'd like to see? And also staff recommends that we can do this on a staff level.
Yeah, I had a general comment, about like use of some, colors, or like signage, sculpture, art, integrated in the design in some way that makes it more attractive and inviting. Of course, this is not the best way to do that, but they have at least tried to use some art. So that I think would be an interesting feature if they integrate that better with the structure.
Yeah, if I could make one comment. You know, these barriers, I really do appreciate them. They were created by volunteer community members at the beginning of the pandemic as a way to help restaurants. So I think it was a great community effort coming together to try to help everyone on the street and keep these restaurants going. You know, and a lot of people put their own time and money into it, and I think we need to acknowledge that, you know, it really did help these restaurants make it in some cases. So, you know, it's nice to see the community rallying around our restaurants and our main street here to help out, so. Yeah, and I do appreciate the idea of, art and color. I mean, they don't all have to be like natural wood color. I mean,
Right, all of them are like that.
you know, everything doesn't have to be beige. So, yeah, I mean, some color, design, art would be great, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's lovely.
Okay, next we have Kim's Cafe. Again, 2 spaces. Going to have some pretty major changes. So they're planning redwood planks for the perimeter barriers, and then pressure-treated plywood for the platform. And then they also submitted a kind of mock-up design of a roof structure as well, which is going to be made of wood, sort of a lean-to type of thing. So I think the redwood planks along the side is relatively similar to what they're planning, but it's going to get rid of the barrels and put in 2x4s. And I can show a picture of the picture they submitted, sorry. So this is the roof structure design.
Was that corrugated? Or what is that? Is it a metal roof?
I'm not sure. I think they don't have any corrugated metal listed in their materials, so it might also be wood, but it's not super specific.
Okay.
Well, this is the one I looked at, and it's like, you need, this is for the connections for that thing to stand up, or, important. How they're all bolted together or screwed together. 'Cause this one inspired less confidence in me structurally than some of the other ones. But, it remains to be seen how they actually detail those connections. And, but it's really important. Well, I guess I'm a little confused about the pressure treated. They said ground contact with pressure treated. I would imagine it's not platform. Pressure treated 1 1/8 tongue and groove plywood. It's not necessarily the best environmental product. I mean, these things leach chemicals. It's going to go straight into the drain, straight into the bay. So I don't know if there's some balance there. They could find a different material for not pressure-treated surface to walk on. It's not a great walking surface. I certainly wouldn't want to get splinters or touch it. I wouldn't want to touch it. If you touch this material, you're supposed to wear gloves. So I would argue against the pressure-treated tongue and groove plywood as the actual walking surface. So something more natural, something not toxic. But underneath, the public wouldn't be actually in physical contact with it. There would be fewer members. They would, and that's where you're supposed to use pressure-treated wood, in contact with the ground or earth, if you need to use it, and advise not to use it in general. So.
Should we go on? Sure. Okay. I'll just let it switch back to Jeff. Next, we have Duo Grill, another 2-space one with some major changes coming. So that's what it looks like right now. And a moment, I'll pull up. So they sent a kind of an inspirational design is what I'm guessing it kind of is. Looks good. So that's an existing parklet, obviously. They said wood as the perimeter barrier, general materials. But yeah, this is generally what they're thinking.
Well, that looks very nice. The only issue would be the step at the curb or at the sidewalk, which would have to be flush. But otherwise, yeah, that looks great.
Yeah, I like the look of this too. And they're just looking for 2 spaces, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So now we'll go back to Chez Monsieur, which we talked about briefly before. This one, again, currently 3 spaces, but going down to 2. And we mentioned, we're assuming that their plan is to open up the space closest to the bulb out. And Commissioner Bowman had his recommendation to move it so the parklet went up against the bulb out. So we have that comment. This is another one where we're recommending that it doesn't need to come back to the commission for approval. And we're not expecting a ton of major changes. Like, the roof structure is probably going to stay the same. He did send a sort of 3D drawing. Let me find it.
I'm sorry, I thought I missed that. Did you, Commissioner McLeod, did you mention recommend moving it further away from the bulb out so you would have 1 parking space remaining? Or where are they requesting to take those 2 spaces? Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, it's a little bit unclear at the moment. Based on, so this roof structure is sort of directly in front of the entrance to the restaurant.
Okay.
And the space next to it where you kind of see this person in blue in the image here is towards the west, and then there's 1 more space that's up next to the bulb out. So we're expecting that they're planning to stop using that space next to the bulb out. So that would leave 1 kind of isolated parking space in between the bulb out and the parklet. The parklet could be moved next to the bulb out, so it's just those 2 spaces next to the bulb out, and then all of the parking next to it. Thanks, Jeff. In that case, it would be a little bit off-center from the restaurant. And just also for context, Toy Go Round is on that corner there, so that space next to the bulb out is the closest parking space to the business that came and commented tonight.
Right, and they don't have any other parking around there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some on Ramona there, but
It's a little tricky.
it's the closest of those Solano parking spaces.
But if they are giving up the space that's next to the bulb out and just taking the 2 next to that, that 1 space would be available to whoever could be shoppers at Toy Go Round. Okay.
Well, I would be okay with the corner parking space or nearest to the store. Maybe that would be appreciated by the store owner, to have the space closer to her store being usable. I don't know. Might be easier for people loading and unloading to have the bulb out next to it. I don't know. But they haven't, but Mansour hasn't. Well, this is where it'd be nice to have a plan, et cetera. I mean, maybe this one, they could come back with more specific drawings or like a plan and maybe the elevations and,
Yeah, we'll definitely need to clarify with that when they submit their application, make that all clear. Are you guys recommending to bring this one back to the commission, or just kind of give the direction to staff when we?
well, I wouldn't mind seeing it again just because we've had the public comment and would be good to maybe hear again from that neighbor, business owner. But I'm assuming Mansour will want the 2 spaces directly in front of their restaurant. I mean, it just kind of makes sense, but.
But currently, they are occupying 3, and they want to reduce 1, so they could reduce either side of, one from either side.
It could, yeah.
And so they can keep the
agreed.
structure right in front of the, restaurant, and occupy, additional parking space on the east side of the structure, like.
Yeah, I see that
Yeah.
picture.
So they can take this portion out and expand on that side. So
That could go to the other side, yeah. They could go, 1 space,
Right,
so leave 2 spaces
exactly.
in front.
That's what I was.
Oh, okay, I thought you were saying
Oh, I see.
move it towards the curb.
No.
Oh, I see.
Not this particular, like, what I was commenting was like, there should not be 1 single space isolated, because it would be hidden behind the parklets, so drivers cannot notice that, and that would stay, unoccupied. It's like a
So just to
inefficient use.
confirm on the screen, we're talking, what you're suggesting for consideration is moving it to the
Those two.
right
Right.
on this, as this
Right,
shows.
yeah, so
There's
then
2 open
two
parking
two
spaces.
spaces are open there next to the bulb
Okay.
out.
Yeah, that makes sense in a way, yeah. And then the other restaurant could also apply, and then could have 4 in a row. But it would be consolidated, maybe. Well, I think, the restaurant has to tell us what they want to do. So I would like to see it again. I don't know.
I agree.
I don't
would
think
as
there's any
well.
harm in looking at it again. Won't
That's-
slow them
that's
down
great.
too much, but.
Will do. All right, we're getting very close. Next, we have Rendezvous. This is a 1-space parklet. They have the parallel space down on the east end of Solano.
Oh, that's right.
I think Jeff's pulling it up here. And this is one that's also pretty much mostly built out. It's going to have some minor changes. This is another one with cones. We'll probably have them replace that with, the reflective tape. But yeah, mostly probably going to stay as is. So again, any feedback from the commission on this one?
It's clean, but I'm not really a big fan of this structure. It looks kind of very bare shed-like structure. It doesn't have any, interesting features, no plants, no color, nothing. And I'm also not very comfortable with use of corrugated plexiglass because, even if it is transparent, when you, look through at from a perpendicular direction, and from an angle, it looks kind of translucent or sometimes opaque. It doesn't compromise any, safety because there is no crosswalk next to that, but it still kind of blocks the view. It feels better to, when you walk along that to see the street and, other side. So, yeah, I would be happy if they replace the plexiglass, corrugated plexiglass with maybe plain plexiglass if they really insist on using that. But I would strongly recommend use of plants and other stuff and removal of the traffic cones.
Yeah, I would agree on the traffic cones and the plexiglass. It does look a little stark because there's not as much openness to it, and there's no planting materials. So I think that would be a good recommendation to add.
Yeah, it looks like the wood could be brightened up or something, or, maybe they could paint it, make it a little more colorful or something. I'm a little neutral on the corrugated plexiglass, but, you know, I guess you're trying to strike a balance between nice open-air seating and then keeping people warm in the evening. You know, generally, I think these things are a little bit better when they're more open air. But, you know, on a night like tonight, you're certainly going to appreciate some enclosure. And, you know, generally, I bet that looks a lot better at night when it's lit up. But, you know, in the day, it doesn't look quite so good. But
I walk past this parklet every day, you know. So it doesn't, you know, feel very pleasant walking by, you know, during the daytime, like in the morning particularly.
yeah. Well, on a nice day, you kind of want to be, if it is nice, outdoor dining is great. Feel the breeze and all that, so.
All right, and we're on to our last one, and this is Solano Junction, a 0 parking space parklet. This one's a little bit different from the rest. It's just sidewalk seating, but it's much more extensive sidewalk seating than we have on the rest of Solano. And this one, we're not going to make it conform with all of our regulations because it's a little different. It's mainly about making sure it reaches ADA requirements and that sort of thing. So we'll just be working with them on sort of getting it into good safety and legal standing. But yeah, we want to bring it up for any commission feedback as well.
You know, that one looks just integral to the streetscape. I mean, it looks fine. I don't really see any ADA issues there if they're all on the same plane of the sidewalk. But, yeah, canopies, open-air dining, lighting, looks fine. It looks like part of the street furniture. So I think, to my eye, that's a good one. You know, they've got some planting.
Yeah, I think this one works well. You forget it's a parklet in a way. It's just, it functions really well, and it just becomes very much the fabric of the sidewalk. So I like the planting they've added. So I think it's very successful.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, and that one seems to be used quite a lot too, so popular area.
Great. So to summarize, we have Everest Kitchen, Bois Long, and Chez Monsour slated to come back for commission review. All 4 of our 3-space parklets have sort of preliminary approval from the commission. Barney's and Zaytoon have more official permission from the commission to use the 3 spaces, and we'll go just to staff approval. And I have lots of notes on all of your comments. Does that all sound correct?
Yes, yeah. 5 Tacos and Beer would come back to us. Everest, Boulong, 5 Tacos and Beer, right?
Let's see, 5 Tacos and Beer, the staff recommendation was that it wouldn't need to come back to the commission unless we sort of have an issue with the sidewalk seating and felt it needed to.
I thought we were going to come back to kind of review it all together, but if you're, I mean.
If you guys like to, we can change that.
It is better to, because it involves a lot of things, you know, sidewalk seating, you know, sight lines and stuff like that.
Okay, so we'll bring it back with the others.
Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah, make sure it's all integrated, sort of a little more than a parklet with the sidewalk, and yeah.
Okay, so we've got 4 then. Everest Kitchen, Bois Long, 5 Tacos and Beers, and Chez Monsour.
Yep.
Okay, is that clear? Yep.
It's certainly clear. We can go with either just kind of the consensus of the commission, or if you wanted to make a motion and vote on it either way. I don't think it's imperative that you vote. But
Why don't we make a motion and vote to have staff implement the feedback they've gotten from the commission? Well, I'll make that motion. I move that we approve the parklet discussion, how do I word this? Approve our feedback that staff will implement going forward with the parklet applications.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second, voting, Commissioner Reek,
Yes?
Commissioner Wellman,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes too. So, okay. Okay.
Thanks so much for going
Thank you.
through all of that with
Thank
us.
you,
We
Michelle,
appreciate
for
it.
keeping us on track. Let's see. I feel bad. We're making these people sit here all evening.
It's interesting. It's my first meeting ever.
And you're here for which item? Is it the condo conversion? Can we take these out of order and,
Sure, we do have our consultant for the housing element.
oh, is he waiting online?
Is also waiting, but it's at the discretion of the commission who you'd like to address first. I don't think either one will take a lot of time.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do our housing element. It's basically just giving us a little feedback, and then we'll, since he's online, Mr. Miller's waiting for us. Why don't we do the housing element and then jump to the other application or the
Okay, thank you
info.
for your,
Yeah, thank you for your patience. Okay, just to set this up, we're moving on to item 8-2, California Department of Housing and Community Development Review of the City of Albany's draft housing element.
so Barry is hitting 2 meetings this evening. We're lucky break to have him be able to join us, and so, I haven't talked about how we're going to organize ourselves. Barry, do you want me to set this up, or do you want to just dive right in?
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, why don't you go ahead, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have or the public may have about the letter.
Okay. If that's the case, just bear with me a second as I pull up just one slide. There we go. So to refresh your memories, in September, we sent to the state a working draft of the housing element. The state had 90 days to send us back a letter. We received it last Friday. And in anticipation of getting this, we had already posted your agenda, and it came in after the agenda was posted, but we attached it. This letter, it was attached to your packet. It's 6 pages. And Barry had an opportunity to review it briefly, and I just wanted to give you our quick initial sort of high-level review of what work HCD is setting out for us in order to complete this housing element. The letter was in 4 general categories. The first is addressing housing needs and resources and constraints in the city, and the comments that we received will require some additional data, some mapping, and some analysis. None of which is it's work, but nothing that is a major, at least at this point, doesn't seem to be a major issue. We do have some questions for HCD about exactly what they're trying to get to, so we have some discussions that need to be done, but that's a bit of work that will need to be done over the next month or so. The second category, and perhaps maybe the most significant in their comments, is related to their review of our proposed housing programs. And they're looking for more specific and actionable language with discrete tasks and timelines. So this is where we're going to really have to think about what we can do in 2023, 2024, 2025, and so forth. That's kind of both a strategy question of what's the highest priority in terms of serving the community, as well as what's your capacity as a commission, what's the capacity of the city council, how many really controversial items do you want to take per year, and keep the rest of your business going as normal. So we'll need to think through that and bring that back to you for your discussion in January or February. Next area of comment from HCD was the quantified objectives, and we'll need to add some objectives for conserving existing housing, particularly the housing that is sort of naturally affordable, the missing middle type of housing, making sure that that's preserved in the community. So we can, again, that's some work to do, but nothing that we can't figure out. And for all these things, we'll be looking at what other cities are doing. We're not the only city that's getting these kind of comments, and we'll learn from the cities that are a little bit ahead of us. Then lastly, with respect to public participation, HCD, as we expected, encourages additional public input. And one of the things that we're thinking about is, in preparing, is a online survey, particularly to get to rental housing tenants in the city. We've had a lot of comment from people who are concerned about rental housing situation in Albany, and that's valuable, but not a lot of actual tenants have participated. And so we thought that would be a good way to learn more about what people are experiencing, and also a way to kind of draw people into the review of the housing element as we're kind of coming to the finish line here. So it both gets that good input from them and also just kind of gets them interested in it. So I'll stop this screen share and invite Barry to elaborate on anything if he wishes, or if the commission wants to ask either one of us any questions.
Well, I guess we'll start with just questions for staff from the commission and then go to public comment and then close our discussion. So any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, would this affect the timeline for submittal, and are we on track? Can we comply with all these requirements within time?
Realistically, we believe that we're probably going to get this finished in February. The deadline, strictly speaking, the deadline is end of January. Like most cities in the Bay Area, we're not going to hit that time frame, I don't think. There's just enough work here over the next 30, 45 days, and anticipating some significant public engagement with you as you're looking at it and making a recommendation to the city council and then to the city council meeting itself. So yeah, our realistic target is doing a lot of work on it in January and bringing it hopefully for approval in the February timeframe.
Okay. And none of these observations are like problematic in terms of like achieving our arena commitments or anything?
We hope not. We don't think so. We do need to ask some questions of HCD on some of these things, like what do you really mean? We thought we addressed some of their concerns, or there's some of these comments, and maybe we just need to elaborate, or they didn't quite see it or didn't read it the way we intended. So there's some work to be done, but nothing that really has given us a lot of heartburn at this point.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
Just another question regarding the public comment, and obviously that will probably take the most amount of time, or public engagement, I should say. Do you have a general process for how that would happen? Is it town hall meetings, or is it surveys, or is it combination of multiple different avenues for getting public comment? How do you see that kind of playing out over the next many weeks?
We think the survey would be an important part of it. We think we're at a stage where we would be happy to engage with anybody formally or informally. We've talked about organizing a community workshop or something like that. It's hard this time of year, just logistically, for a lot of different reasons. So I don't know how that's going to play out exactly. But ultimately, this commission and your meetings are where you're making the recommendation to the city council. So I think this venue is going to be really very important in that engagement process, and we would want to kind of ultimately focus all those comments and competing perspectives and bring them to you.
Okay.
Thank you for your service. I see that Barry has his hand up. He
Yeah,
may
I want to
want
listen to Mr. Miller for a minute, and then I have a few questions.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just going to add that that Jeff and I will be meeting with HCD very shortly, like in the next week or so. We would like to get in front of them before the break to clarify what a lot of their comments mean, because and I've seen a lot of these letters, and a lot of the comments are very vague. And you read them and you think, well, we did that. What more are they looking for? So that conversation that we have with them can be really helpful in getting exactly what it is that they're looking for. They had a number of comments about our site inventory that we would like clarification on, because we actually went through great lengths to demonstrate that our sites were feasible by looking at all of the properties up and down San Pablo Avenue, not only in Albany, but in Berkeley and El Cerrito, and showing them that these are viable sites, and they're still asking for more data. So that's the kind of thing where we really need to drill down a little bit and find out exactly what it is we can do to meet their bar. The other, as Jeff mentioned, with respect to the specificity of the programs, I think to some extent we were expecting that comment, and they did tell us which specific programs they're looking for us to put a more actionable verb in. So rather than considering something, they want us to just say, we're going to do it, and when, and so forth. So that, I would say those are the two major areas where most of our revisions are going to be focused. Just wanted to add that in. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if I could just jump in for a little bit. Yeah, it seems like it's mostly doable. A lot of it is just technical, and it seems like it's staff related and Mr. Miller related. And so I guess what I want to know is, like, specifically what do we need to do as a commission? And then, I think it revolves more around the housing programs. But I would also like to say that I think we need to work with council on those, because some of that seems to be more council level decision making, or at least guidance for us. So that was my biggest takeaway from this letter.
I agree with you that there are ultimately some council decisions about what their priorities are for the next few years, but I think it's valuable for you as a commission to talk about that and at least put forward to them some recommendations, and they can, of course, go in a different direction if they want. But we want to, and it also, by sharing it with you first, it gives people a chance the members of the public to think about it and have a little bit more time to discuss it before it comes to council, and it doesn't feel quite so rushed. This will feel a little bit rushed because we do feel some urgency to getting it done, but we want to try to get as much in front of you as possible.
So back to process. So obviously you want to submit or resubmit in February. So basically at our next meeting, we want to be working on this, or have some proposals or some concrete.
I'm not sure about your next meeting. I think we have a fair amount of work before we'll have something that's baked enough to bring back to you. But at a upcoming meeting, later in January or early February, your first meeting in February, would probably want to have you take a detailed look in it, and it will be a meeting where I would expect that this might be the only thing on the agenda, or the primary thing on the agenda, so you could spend a couple hours with it if you needed to.
Okay, yeah, it seems like there's a lot to put together for these programs. It's not just on the fly. It's kind of detailed. It's substantial things and a big commitment for the city in some areas going forward. Am I right? What is?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And also, sorry, just to add on to that, regarding timeline, if it's February, you want to submit it, you'd be submitting a response back to the state, right? In February, or is there that's when you would have a draft or a revision that would be for public review and comment? Is that an extra step, or?
We would have a revision that would be for public review and comment and for your recommendation. Under state law, you have to make a recommendation
Okay,
on the final draft.
okay.
And that would go to council, and we would ask council to approve it. With council's approval, we would then send it to the state, and the state certifies it, that not only do the councils make findings that it's consistent with state law, but the state Housing and Community Development Department also makes findings that it's consistent. From their perspective, it's also consistent with state law. So ideally, again, by the end of February, we send a city council approved, what we hope is the final housing element. And then they review that, and then they'll either send us a letter that says it's certified, or they'll send us back another letter that says, no, you still got it, you have to do a bunch of stuff. Now, in Southern California, most of the cities did get that second letter back. Other cities in the Bay Area are starting to get there. A few of them have gotten certified, not many, but a handful. So we'll see.
So the process would be probably the second meeting in January. You would bring a range of proposals to us, and we would debate them and get public comment and hopefully some council direction
Not
afterwards
quite.
or
I'm
before.
not sure we quite know what the pathway forward is. We'll get as much to you as early as we can.
Okay.
But there'll be a lot to look at on a pretty short period of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's my impression. And then tonight, we are just receiving this information and don't need to act or come up with any.
That's right.
Ideas or proposals.
This is just an important milestone that we received this letter, and we didn't know what it was going to be when we put it on the agenda. And we just wanted, this is a way of putting it out there so that people can know that it's in the public domain.
Okay, well, let's take public comment on this item. If there is anyone remote or anyone here in attendance would like to comment on our housing element? No?
It looks like we have one person on Zoom.
Someone waiting, remotely.
Jeremiah, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm just speaking as myself, Jeremiah, not as an SEJC member. But I know that it's been made public. City Council wants the SEJC to basically focus on housing, basically focus on the housing element, big time. So I'm just wondering if we could all kind of work together on this, just as a city, as a community. Jeff Bond, you'll probably get some emails tonight or tomorrow regarding this. And also just the public workshop. I mean, I think that's a big deal to get the public involved, to have the public, ask questions, have the planning and zoning and also SEJC maybe have everybody ask the public questions, more of an involved review process instead of just something, legally we have to notify public and have to have some sort of online survey. I would just like to see this commission take a more in-depth approach to involving the community, and maybe Jeff Bond, we could all work together and try to figure something out, a way to, because you mentioned community workshop. I think that's a great terminology, or community listening session, something like that, to where that way the community can come to one event. Maybe there's an event coming up in the future, a city event, to where, there could be a booth or a table or something to where the community could be involved. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to get the community's questions and basically input on housing and what they foresee Albany to do with housing in the next, foreseeable future, next 2 years. I know a lot of people talk about housing. I know housing's probably one of the most biggest issues in Albany, and everybody has to have a roof over their head and a safe place to sleep at night. So So we can't take this lightly. This housing draft element, this housing element is quite a big deal. And I think it should be treated as such with respects of the community's involvement. So maybe some more ideas can be thrown around on how to get the community involved. Online surveys, great. You know, how does that really work? Maybe something in person, you know, at the community center, hold some sort of housing event. So hopefully we can all work together and figure this out. Keep up the good work, everybody.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments? Any other public speakers in
I don't see any others.
the queue? Okay, well, we'll close public comment and move to discussion. If there is any more to discuss. Mr. Miller, any more thoughts?
No, just to respond to a question that came up earlier about the documents you'll be receiving. You'll be getting a line-by-line response to the comments that HCD came up with that we'll be preparing. You'll receive a tracked change version of the entire draft housing element that shows every edit that's been made in response to their comments and which comments the edits are in response to, and you'll get a clean version of the housing element that shows what it looks like once the changes are accepted. And that's typically the protocol that's followed in every community for this process. So when we come back to you for that deeper dive discussion, you'll have those tools at your disposal to look over.
Okay, sounds good. Any other discussion? No? Well, I would just like to respond to Jeremiah's suggestion for working with the Social and Economic Justice Committee. I think that's a great idea. I think that's, council's kind of given them a mandate to work on housing, fair housing, or?
I think that's something that's under discussion.
Or under discussion. I think that was the discussion at the last, one of the last council meetings. So yeah, it's another excellent way to get more community input and generate more discussion. So that's yeah, a positive thing to do. Okay, so we'll close discussion and close the item.
Thank you, Barry.
8-2. Thank you, Mr. Miller. And now we can move on to our next item, 8-3, pre-application consultation regarding potential condominium conversion at 810, 812 Masonic Avenue. Thank the applicants for their patience. So we'll first start with just a staff presentation, and then we'll have you speak afterwards, if that's all right. Okay, thank you.
So this is a informal pre-application consultation with the commission. It's something that's a little different, actually quite a bit different. I don't think we've done any sort of condominium conversion in the city for more than in at least 10 or 15 years. Condominium conversions typically are larger apartment buildings that are converted from rental to ownership, but one unit by unit condominium ownership. And this is larger buildings sometimes raises complicated issues about the treatment of the existing residents and the condition of the building and raise a lot of policy issues. This is a unique situation where the potential applicants here have a duplex and they would like to turn it into a condominium. Technically, that is no issues with that. That can be done under both local regulations and state laws. But before they went to the time and effort and expense of preparing quite a bit of material that we require and that the State Department of Real Estate requires, I wanted to give them an opportunity to hear from you to make sure that there weren't any there might not be any surprises that would come back to either change the pathway that they would like to take. So again, this is just kind of a courtesy check-in. They can, of course, address you with the kind of the context for why they're doing this. I wouldn't want to put words in their mouth. So perhaps if I could, you could invite them to address the commission.
Okay, why don't we, have the applicants welcome and explain your process or your goals or just what you're trying to do.
Okay. Good evening. Jeff, do you have can you put up a picture you sent me the front of our duplex?
Oh, from the staff report?
Yeah, yeah. So my wife and I live in a duplex. So we live on one side, and my son and his wife and 2 children live on the other. So it's both owner occupied. So there's no concern with tenants or any tenant requirements. We believe we can fulfill all of the requirements of the code. The only question that has come up, which has been a favorite question tonight, is parking requirements. My understanding is that from the code, although it's not easy to find, is that each, in a condominium conversion, each unit needs 1.5 parking spaces, so 3 parking spaces for both units. We have there, each unit has a built-in garage and a driveway. So from our practical concern, we fulfill those requirements. Now, there has been some question in the past, I don't know of a rule, I don't know if it's still the rule, that the driveway cannot be considered part of those spaces. We have, even though it's something that we park as most people do, we use the driveway as a parking space. We actually have our EV chargers in each garage. But in case that is the rule, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense for these reasons. First of all, I'm assuming that such a rule was made because of concern for on-street parking. We live on Masonic between Albany and Washington, and on Masonic, I'm sorry, Solano and Washington, and there's always spaces, plenty of spaces on Masonic, and also we live one house away from Washington, and it's, in fact, you could look in your pictures there. There's a picture of both Masonic Avenue and also Washington Avenue. I think we've lived here for 10 years. I think in those 10 years, if we wanted to park on the street, I can never remember not finding a space. Even when in those, twice a month, there's the street cleaning where everyone has to park on one side of the street. Even in those 2 days, never a problem. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to require these 2 spaces per unit, or not allowing you to count the driveway as a space. So besides plenty of parking, another important point, was a lot of points that you could read and take a look at your own time, but I think most importantly, there are 2 homes in the neighborhood that are in the process of building ADU legal units, and none of them have been required to add a parking space for their additional units. 1250 Washington, which is right next door, has converted a former garage into an ADU, and no additional parking was asked of them, and they have no driveway at all. 805 Evelyn is in the process of building an ADU, converted a garage to a 2-story ADU, and no additional parking space was required. 810 Evelyn, right around the block, already has a ADU about a year ago, and they have no parking, and that was also a converted garage. So if this is some kind of rule that the driveway cannot be used, I mean, I think we're asking for an exception or variance to that rule. All of these 3 ones are taking a parking space away, not adding any parking space, and they're adding an additional unit, We are not adding any additional units, using the same.
And it's a two-bedroom, one bath on each side, so very small living spaces compared to the other ones who have large living spaces, and they're having ADU, and they only have, and no additional parking. That's our,
So that's our request. Yeah.
If I understand correctly, your main concern is that you don't want to go ahead with the condoization process if you run up against this hard and fast parking rule.
That's right.
That would prevent you from doing it.
That's right.
And you go to all this expense, and, okay, I think I get it. That's really the only maybe potential, I mean, I don't see any other issues there, or.
Again, a larger building, we could probably have a lot of issues that we would have to work through, but in the facts of this situation, I don't see any reasons.
So there's a question of a parking exception, which we could discuss in a few minutes or something.
How would this application be treated in the context of SB 9 or the new parking?
I was just looking at the new, so there is a new legislation, which we'll be talking about at a future meeting in detail. We're still doing some research on it, but this property is within the range where the city will not be able to impose parking requirements on it. And I think that applies to condominium conversions as well. It's not it's kind of a clunky piece of legislation, so I'll double check it in the morning, but I think it's, A, we couldn't impose requirements if we wanted, or B, we can grant that front yard parking exception like you have done this evening. And then they would be compliant. They'd have 4 spaces where the condo conversion ordinance calls for 3. So I think there's some opportunities to respond and address that particular issue without derailing their proposal.
All right, well, let's take public comment. We open it up to public comment for every item. So if there's anyone that would like to make public comment, there's no one in the room, so it would have to be somebody.
I'm not seeing any hands
No hands
raised on
raised.
Zoom.
Okay, so we'll go ahead, we'll close public comment, and we'll move to commission discussion, and you can sit down, and, if we have questions, we'll ask you again. But, okay, Commissioner Moman?
Yeah, I look at the code that you shared with us, that 20.60.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, can you hear me better? No problem. Yeah, so I looked at the municipal code section pertaining to the condo conversion, and I think that you need a huge amount of documentation and a lot of compliance in terms of reports and stuff like that. Jeff must have explained you all that, and so if you are willing to go through all that, even if this is a small project and unusual in your opinion, I'm okay with that. I support that, and I'm also okay with allowing you a concession on driveway parking.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I generally find that this is just very similar to what we've already been approving for exceptions for, and especially since the state law is going to change here in, I don't know, less than 30 days, where we're really not going to be able to regulate or restrict parking or require parking restrictions. This seems to sort of fall into that camp there.
Yeah, I think state law may be changing in your favor. I mean, I think, well, it's definitely there is a state law coming in January that restricts cities' ability to impose parking minimums. And from what I read, it applies to all residential buildings within a half mile of a transit.
All everything.
Pardon?
It applies to everything.
Oh, even commercial
Commercial
buildings?
too?
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. And 90% of Albany is within a half mile of either BART or other transit-oriented corridors with the number of bus stops. So this may just be a moot question for you that it's granted by state law. And then if it's not, then I would support an exception for your driveway. And the only restriction that I see there is that there is a minimum size for the driveway parking area, right? Which is 16 by 8?
16 feet.
Our cars fit in without coming onto the sidewalk.
Well, it'd have to be, I mean, technically it would have to be 16 by 8, or I don't know if we can waive the second, or the 0.5. I don't know, I would.
SUV would be
Well, it doesn't really matter the size of the car, it's more, there's a minimum standard for that space in the driveway, even if it is not, I mean, we can grant an exception and allow that to be the driveway space, or the parking space, or one of the parking spaces.
Right, but you're saying that if the state law comes into effect in January, then it's a kind of moot question anyway.
That's my assumption, is that state law will preempt our local codes, and we can no longer apply those parking standards that we have in our zoning ordinance. I mean, is that what you assume also?
That is what I'm understanding it to be, but I do want to look at it carefully because it is not a particularly well-written piece of, not particularly clearly written legislation, and I just want to double-check with our city attorney to make sure that we're doing it the right way. But again, I think with the commission's feedback tonight that even if it doesn't apply to a condominium conversion, the fact that it's likely that the commission would look favorably on some form of parking exception, whether it's granting it in the front yard or if that doesn't fit, just waiving the requirement in total, then I think the feedback I'm hearing you give the applicants is that they should feel comfortable proceeding unless something comes up. And
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I mean, we all have to reapply. We might not be here next year.
True, yes.
I'm assuming we will, but, so you could be up here with a different group of people, but I'm assuming that all of us will be back, or most of us. Well, it's up to the new council members to reappoint members, so. But I would certainly support what Jeff was outlining, that if the state law didn't, supersede all this, then I would support a waiver or an exception in this case. I don't see any harm in it at all.
seeing more and more families just have, especially in Albany, having one car, and they commute to San Francisco on BART or the bus, which is a block away, and bikes. It's wonderful to see that more and more are just using one car.
if we should be getting you to the microphone if you want to continue to address that. Maybe we don't need to, I don't know.
We're not supposed to really discuss at this point, so it's okay. So I think it's clear for staff, clear for the applicants. So our advice is, listen to what we said and move forward accordingly. So I'll close discussion on this item, and we'll move on to our next item. And thank you again for your patience. And
Thank you all.
welcome
Back
to come back
anytime.
every meeting.
Next month.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to our next item, 8-4, discussion of implementation of Senate Bill 1214 regarding copyright protection of architectural plans submitted to the city. And I will hand it over to Steph.
Yeah, so this is, the state legislature has been busy in a lot of different ways, and this snuck up on a lot of the land use planners in California. I think we're just kind of getting an awareness of this legislation. But it's going to have an impact on how we interact with you and how we interact with the public. What we've known for years is any licensed architect or engineer that submits plans that are stamped, that's copyrighted material. We don't release we don't release those documents in paper form unless we have permission of the architect or engineer who stamped the plans. We do, however, routinely post them on the internet so that you and everybody can see the plans like you did this evening before they're approved. This new state law dramatically changes that, and it protects the copyright of the professional work. And specifically what it does is allows the city to let members of the public come here to City Hall to inspect plans, but we can't allow them to copy them. We can't allow them, we're not allowed to put them on the internet as we do presently. So we can send them to you, and we can show them in the course of the public hearing, which it's not a great screen. I mean, it's a good screen, but it's not good enough to really look at the details that a lot of people are going to look at. So our approach to this is to, first of all, if there is an architect or engineer that is willing to waive this requirement, that would be great. And then we would post their plans as we normally would. In some cases, we get plans from people who are unlicensed. We'll continue to post those as we normally would. But for those where someone says, no, I don't want my plans posted, we will then create a separate Dropbox or something for commissioners only. And then we'll make it clear in the staff report and the agenda that these are copyright restricted documents, and that if people are interested in seeing it, they need to come to City Hall. So it's kind of it's a little bit of a bummer for members of the public who might otherwise be able to look at this 24/7 at the comfort of home, kind of going back in time to pre-internet. But that's the new law. We'll see how it works out. There is a provision where we can require the applicant to prepare a massing diagram and a site plan. We'll do that. I don't know that that really gets to the issues that people care about in Albany, but we'll have something at least.
So this is limited to specifically architectural plans, floor plans and elevation sections, but not to any, long-range planning projects or anything.
That's right. We kind of treat the professional stamp as the copyright, if you will. So even if an architect prepared a plan, let's say, unless they're putting their professional stamp on it for some reason, we wouldn't consider that copyrighted. It's only those plans that are stamped. I will say that this legislation refers specifically to architecture, but the same principles apply to engineering, landscape architecture. I think anyone with a professional license, that's copyrighted material. So we're going to treat that, if a landscape architect, if you get a application package that includes architectural plans, engineering plans, and landscape design plans from all those licensed professionals, we're going to treat them all the same. We're not going to release some of them and not the others. We also we'll probably be taking down some of the archives that we presently have. It's going to be tricky, and we may not get all of them, but we do have a page right now on our webpage of past applications, and we'll probably be taking those down and just have a note, if you have any questions about this, contact the city, and we'll see if we can provide them. I don't know that anybody really goes back to them anyhow, but just to again, we're trying to honor the copyright and respect the intent of the law, which is that, not have people take advantage of somebody else's creative professional work and use it in another way. I understand that.
Would there be any restrictions on members of the commission who have access to those drawings?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about that. I would think that might be of continued value to you. You can tell us how you feel about that, but as long as you're using it in the context of your, of course you would, in the context of your duties on the commission, I don't think we should take it away from you. If you wanted to see one set of plans and compare it to a project that you approved a month or two ago, earlier, I don't see why you shouldn't be able to do that.
Well, should we take public comment on this issue, if there is any? And then
I don't see any hands raised.
okay, so we'll close public comment and move to final discussion or thoughts on this. Well, I can see why it's being done, because case in point, all the documents that we can pull up on our agendas, we can download.
Yes.
So that's copying right there. I guess I didn't quite understand that you can't even put it on your agenda and have it online, but in some form that's not really able to be copied or downloaded. I mean, that is, I guess it says, yeah, not, is only on the premises, basically, of the city buildings. And
I think to honor the spirit of it, even you could, download, restrict the document on the webpage, but people can take a screenshot.
right. You can
Yeah.
still
And that's-
copy it, which,
That breaks the spirit of it, I think so.
which is illegal or subject to civil, measures or civil suit or something. But, the likelihood of somebody suing for this is zero. But,
You would post the application and the rendering or anything that's not necessarily a engineered or stamp drawing.
I think
Yeah.
there is I'd look at the details of the legislation. I think there was something about being able to show the massing, and I would take that as maybe a front
Rendering,
elevation or
right.
something like that,
Right, and also renderings.
Yeah, renderings.
yeah. Or we can just require people to everybody has to do a rendering.
well, right, it says post a site plan or massing diagram.
Right.
Well, maybe we develop a checklist that requires that can be published, and maybe a box they could check if they are willing to let it be put.
So they could either check the box and release them, or they have to do a massing drawing.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. And again, it is open, massing diagram is kind of open to interpretation. Some people might just literally show blocks.
It's
Some
just a
people
block,
might show
yeah. It's just
articulation.
literally a block.
Right. And it may not be useful in all contexts.
It's probably not that useful, just a massing diagram. I mean, you need to see more.
I mean, I think a rendering
As
is,
it is, planning
Most helpful.
exercise showing.
Well, it's a funny thing, because let's say for like the Albany Bowl project, the public can't see it unless they come here to the city hall to look at it. That's not very helpful to, either gain support or generate questions or anything about a project or.
I'm hoping, and I don't know, we'll see how it goes, but I'm hoping most of our applicants don't object to at least making it available during the period of time between, between when the notice goes out and when the hearing is held. And then we take it down after the decision is made.
And it would be undownloadable, right?
Right.
It can be viewed only on screen.
We're looking into whether we have the ability, is easily able on our webpage to turn off the download function.
yeah.
Right now, you just download the PDF. But we know we can take the document out of off our webpage after the meeting and just delete that webpage.
Well, some sites have built-in protection where you can't copy a photo or download a photo or Instagram.
Because if you allow downloading for limited, time, it would still be downloaded and could be circulated illegally, So if it is shared with public, it's better not to, have the feature of downloading.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you could always do a screenshot somehow of something, some detail or, I don't know. know. So it's pretty rare that these drawings are actually reused and copied, or details are copied. Pretty rare, but I understand the
And, you know,
concerns.
there is this movement, right? What is it called? Commons? Forgot the name. Do you know that? So in which basically creative people make their creations open to all. That can be freely downloaded, shared, used, and whatever.
Just public, and, yeah, just public documents then.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, well, some people wouldn't be concerned about it. I mean, I would be concerned that, my stamp is on there, my signature's on my stamp, that somebody could copy that and use it. I mean, it's not impossible, or, I mean, there are concerns for things like that.
Yeah. I could imagine someone,
Yeah, or maybe, the stamp documents are only for, the city's review purpose, and the drawings that are shared with public don't have the stamp, and, yeah, something like that.
Well, if they're submitted, I think we have to stamp them.
we're not really,
Or just like an informational kind of page.
yeah, at the planning level, we're not really, we're not checking stamps. At the building permit stage, we definitely do.
Right.
Anyhow, I think this is just something we're going to have to kind of experiment with a little bit and see where our applicants want to go with it. And it may not be a big deal at all. It will be business as usual, or maybe it starts to get complicated and we'll have to adjust our practices a little bit.
Well, so you'll be able to send them to us as
You'll get it for sure.
governmental, quasi-governmental people. But I guess the problem is it's notification of neighbors, and, kind of what we've always been doing is neighbors see the plans, then they show up and they voice their concerns. They're not really going to be able to see what's going on until, like, they're sitting here and they won't even know to come and sit here, sort of thing, or...
Or would that trigger, a need for in-person engagement, where there could be a common gathering and the project is displayed?
Yeah, maybe for a larger project, like a
Yeah.
Would this require for smaller?
multifamily or something, but yeah.
Well, in Berkeley, often we're required to go around to the contiguous properties, show the neighbors the plans, and get a sign-off, a signature that they've seen the plans, and that kind of gives them the opportunity to voice concerns. Or
I've never
that's
heard
also
people
kind of
being
burdensome.
that's not very popular within.
No, it's a pain. It's a big pain. Attest to that, but that is one way to engage the immediate neighbors.
That gets to another thing that we will try to do with more emphasis, is to say to applicants, we really want you to go around and talk to your neighbors about this project. And because your neighbor won't be able to get this as easily from the city, you really need to, be nice to your neighbor, go show them what this is. The applicant can't rely on the city to communicate for them anymore, in those cases where the architect where engineer doesn't give permission.
Okay, well, I don't think there's anything more to say on this subject, so we'll just see how it goes going forward. And okay, so we'll close item 8-4. Move on to item 9, next meeting, January 11th. And in the meantime, we will have applications to fill out for,
I don't know exactly the time frame. I think you'll be hearing from the city clerk next week.
okay.
And when I see that go out, I'll wait a couple of days and give you another reminder.
Okay, great. Well, with nothing else to add, then we'll adjourn the meeting and see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.